The following program is an MLWRadio.com production.
Don't you know that you can save thousands at SaveWithBruce.com? You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket either, pal.
What's your interest rate,
And thank God, I want to be at my own house. And SaveWithBruce.com can make it happen.
You don't need perfect credit.
Cheaper monthly payments.
Interest isn't like cheeseburgers. Double ain't a good thing.
Cash out.
Make home improvements.
Debt consolidation.
You don't need money out of pocket or a tennis racket.
And you can even skip your next 2 house payments.
That's right. Skip your next 2 house payments.
SaveWithBruce.com.
Just 10 minutes. Right now.
You heard me, damn it. SaveWithBruce.com.
NMLS
65084.
Equal housing lender. Mother.
Have you or someone you know been diagnosed with mesothelioma? You probably have many questions, such as, what should I do? Where can I get more information? RGT4Law.com can answer those questions and help you get the money you deserve. Call 855-RGT4Law or visit RGT4Law.com and fill out the simple form for a free consultation. Robert Taylor, R.G. Taylor II, PC and Associates, Houston, Texas.
What would Vince say about that?
Well, hey man, to the end.
My sure arms look good tonight.
Yeah.
It's so big.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Bullshit.
Welcome to Wrestle.
World title now.
Welcome to Something to Wrestle With.
Something to wrestle with.
Something to wrestle with. Bruce Prichard. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle With. Bruce Prichard. Bruce, I like that little sniffle right in the middle. Are you not feeling good today? What's going on, buddy?
No, I'm feeling great. It was just, an homage.
An homage?
No, an homage.
What was an homage to?
Just the sniffles.
To Brother Love in the 80s?
No, Brother Love didn't do that shit, man.
Shit. Oh gosh, we're already starting with lies. Well, let's tell some more.
Tiger.
Let's tell some more lies. We are coming off of a pretty fun week. We had In Your House Beware a Dog last week, and then in between, we dropped Global Wrestling. What's the feedback been so far? Anything we want to go ahead and tie up loose ends for?
No, and as far as the global, those are my recollections. Those are my stories of how I remember things, and that's it. Again, I love it when people want to get technical. No, that's not it, and I'll tell you the full story. I don't care about the full story. I'm talking about how things affected me and what it was with me at the time.
You ain't got to get hot about it, bro.
I'm about half hot.
I can tell. Well, I tell you what, the other thing that's half hot right now are tickets for Something to Wrestle With, Bruce Prichard live tour. That's right. We are probably coming to a city near you. We had a huge series of announcements this week about all the different places you can catch us live and in color, baby. Tell everybody all about it, Bruce. What do we need to do?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and do this thing in chronological order. So we're going to go through, we're going to tell you where we're going to be, when we're going to be there, and how you can join us live on the Something to Wrestle With Bruce Prichard, Conrad Thompson tour, live and in living color. And the very first stop is going to be Baltimore on June the 4th. Okay, that's Extreme Rules weekend. And we will be at Jimmy's Famous Seafood at 2 o'clock, and you can get tickets at mt.cm. So that's June 4th, Baltimore. Jimmy's Famous Seafood, the greatest restaurant in all of Baltimore. We're going to be there on Sunday, June 4th. St. Louis, June 18th. That's Father's Day. We're going to be in St. Louis at the South Broadway Athletic Club at 2 p.m. And you can get your tickets at notarib.com. And then I'm going over to the UK. I got to go do the UK solo, but I will be in England on July 16th in Birmingham, England, 17th in Manchester, and July 18th in London. Get all of your ticket needs in England at hookedonevents.co.uk. A brand new one to announce, folks. Philadelphia, you've been asking for it. You're going to get it on Sunday, July 23rd. We will be at the Theater of living arts. And get tickets by going to livenation.com and just go to the artist search for Bruce Prichard and get your tickets for Philadelphia, July 23rd. New York City. Now, Conrad, this one's exciting. We sold out New York City. Well, we have, I think, 5 tickets left in New York City for Saturday, August 19th. So what the hell? Sunday, August the 20th, New York City, brand new show on Sunday, matinee, before SummerSlam. We will be back at the Gramercy Theater. We have VIP and general admission tickets. They all go on sale today at noon Eastern Time. Get those tickets at Live Nation again. Go to livenation.com, search Bruce Prichard for the Gramercy, the second show at the Gramercy on Sunday, August the 20th. Now, that one's going to be exciting. I can't wait for both shows in New York City. Detroit, October the 8th in Detroit. We're going to be at St. Andrews Hall on Sunday, October 8th. Go to livenation.com, search for Bruce Prichard. And Conrad, I'm coming home and you're coming with me. We're going to be in Houston on Sunday, November the 19th at House of Blues, Houston. And same thing, go to livenation.com, search for Bruce Prichard for Sunday, November 19th, right here in Houston, Texas, and Boston. We're going to round the year out, Boston, Massachusetts, Sunday, December 17th at the House of Blues. And go to livenation.com, search for Bruce Prichard, and get all of your ticket needs for Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
So there you go. We're coming to a town near you. You've wanted to see us. We get lots of messages on Twitter. When are you coming here? When are you coming there? Well, we're coming there soon. So go ahead, check out livenation.com for most of those tickets that are available right now. But first and foremost, in less than a month, we're coming to Baltimore, Jimmy Seafood, mt.cm. A couple weeks after that, notarib.com is where you need to go to see us in St. Louis. And if you are interested in seeing Bruce across the pond, it's hookedonevents.co.uk. We've gotten all of our plugs out of the way, except I know you want to give a very special thank you before we get knee deep in this week's Judgment Day 2002.
Man, I got to throw a shout out to my good buddy Ryan Aday, who I mentioned something on this podcast on a bonus show that I really like, the Hyundai Genesis. And Ryan reached out to me and hooked me up with 2 brand new cars this week, one for me, one for my wife. And he's at GardenGroveHyundai.net. So if you need a car, you're in the California area or anywhere in the country, check Ryan Aday out over at Garden Grove Hyundai. Great guy. He can hook you up no matter where you are.
So there you go. You can also get hooked up if you are in need of some legal services at rgt4law.com. On the other side, Judgment Day 2002.
Have you or a loved one been affected by mesothelioma? You may not have to file a lawsuit to get a recovery. Go to rgt4law.com and fill out the easy form for more information. Robert Taylor, RG Taylor II, PC and Associates, Houston, Texas.
All right, it's time. Bruce, what happened when WWE ran Judgment Day 2002? There is so much going on for this show. It's one of the more underrated topics. This was a nail-biter of a poll. It actually looked like it finished in a draw. Of course, Twitter will help us out and go ahead and tell us how many actual votes there were and not just go on percentages. But Shotgun Saturday Night and the Rockers, man, this was a nail-biter here. But Judgment Day 2002, I think, is one of the more critical pay-per-views that we could cover because there's so much other stuff going on. For example, this is the last pay-per-view before Steve Austin walks out. This is the last time we'll see Hulk Hogan as world champion. This is an American Badass version of The Undertaker. This is the rookie year of Brock Lesnar, and before Goldberg has come over and people are making that comparison, the roster is probably as stacked as it will ever be. The quote-unquote curtain jerker on the card is Eddie Guerrero versus Rob Van Dam. You've also got Kurt Angle in a hair match. This thing goes on and on and on with all the stuff going around in the company, but it's also the first time that we've had a pay-per-view where the WWE has had to get the F out They changed their name from the WWF to the WWE, ran the big Get the F Out campaign, and it happens just a couple of days after the British Bulldog passes away. So there's just so much going on here. I don't know that we'll be able to go long form on each of those sidebars, but I think there are at least half a dozen shows that we could do that somehow involve Judgment Day 2002. But when I first mentioned this pay-per-view to you, Bruce, does anything just jump to mind right away?
Well, the first thing that came to mind right away was the head shaving match with Kurt Angle and Edge. But as I watched it, I just smiled and laughed through the whole thing because, first of all, I thought it was a great show. And it was just a flood of memories coming back. So that was good.
You know, are you blowing a horn? What was that?
It was the morning train coming through.
Are you okay?
Wonderful.
I think we need to name that. Okay, so let's talk about it. Lots of stuff to get into here. If you haven't already, I encourage you to go watch this pay-per-view. It's on the network right now. This took place in Nashville. I was actually there, May 19th, 2002. And at the time, the Bridgestone Arena was called the Gaylord Entertainment Center. And this was a really, really, really big show. I say that just because there's so much stuff going on. Let's kind of go ahead and get into setting the stage a little bit. This is the first pay-per-view where the WWE has changed their name. The company had lost a court case. They no longer could use the letters WWF. And now they have decided to rebrand themselves as the WWE. And they actually run a series of promos, even inside this pay-per-view, with little reminders about this Get the F Out campaign, where they make it kind of interesting. And they're having to spend quite a bit of money and quite a bit of time, I'm sure, rebranding the company, because this is what it's been called the entire time you've been there and even before you got there, Bruce. So briefly tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, how this came about, when you heard about it, when you guys knew about it, and what the plans were to rebrand something that had already been so well established. It was an American institution, and people still, even all this time later, 15 years later, they will still refer to it, to me, as WWF.
Yeah, it was a huge pain in the ass, and it all stemmed from the WWF in the UK, the World Wildlife Fund, who also used the initials WWF with a little panda. And it kind of came about due to this thing they call the internet. And we had registered World Wrestling Federation and the initials WWF here in the United States, and we also registered them for the World Wide Web as well. The WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, had done the same thing, but they had done it in the United Kingdom. They fought for the letters, as did we, but it looked like the preliminary judgment from a court in the UK that I guess was the court that really governed over the internet ruled in the World Wildlife Fund favor. And it just looked like something that we would win in certain places, but we would lose in others. And the decision was made, rather than spend the money to fight that we might possibly lose, let's make the change and spend that money to rebrand. And Vince felt that renaming the brand or rebranding the company as an entertainment company was the way to go. And that's how they came up with World Wrestling Entertainment. And trust me, man, there were a lot of people trying to get that wrestling out of the title too.
Oh, we got to talk.
Thank God they didn't do that.
I want to talk about this. I'm sure we'll make this into a full show sometime, but who is the legal representation that was being used for this? Is this the same crew that we're also familiar with?
No, this was a lot of in-house people. This wasn't the usual McDivitt group, as best I remember. Now, Jerry may have been involved at some point, But because it was international, we were using legal folks in the United Kingdom. We were having, it was a whole team of people, but I believe it was headed by the CEO and the folks in-house for the most part. Now, again, McDivitt was probably involved, and Laura Bravetti, they were probably involved at some point, giving their advice, but I don't think they headed it up.
It was reported at the time that Justice Robin Jacob, when hearing the case, said the WWF's legal team, and these are actual references, that their arguments were quote unquote hopeless and astonishingly poor. And I've always read that and thought, that's not McDivitt. Like, there's just no way that, and I don't know him, but just based on what we've heard, for all these years and all the different times somebody has ran opposed to the WWE or WWF, it usually doesn't go their way. And this might be one of the only times that they lost a case like this, and seemingly a really, really big one. At the time, this to me seemed like one of the biggest stories in the history of wrestling, but you just kind of made it as if you didn't feel if it was that big of a deal.
It was a big deal. Sure, it was a very big deal, but it was also something that they looked at and saw an opportunity in to rebrand the company.
So who would have been pushing for rebranding the company? Is Vince, does Vince have someone in his ear saying to change the name, or is Vince himself all about changing the name?
Vince himself was all about changing the name, but also the marketing people and the merchandising and licensing people were all for it, as well as folks in television production were all for it. It just broadened the company to be able to include the movies. Again, to me, it was just semantics. To me, you could have the World Wrestling Federation movies as easy as you can World Wrestling Entertainment movies. But they wanted that word entertainment in there to be that descriptor of what the company was. So it wasn't like, oh my God, this is the end of the world. They looked at it as, oh my God, this is a new beginning. And just seeing the glass half full, because it was one of those fights where you get into and it's like, God, man, I'm not sure that I'm going to get out of this one.
Linda McMahon would have a quote in the WWE's press release. As World Wrestling Entertainment, we have entertained millions of fans around the United States and around the globe. Our new name puts the emphasis on the E for entertainment, what our company does best. WWE provides us with a global identity that is distinct and unencumbered, which is critical to our U.S. and international growth plans. So they're trying to spin this into a positive, and allegedly you guys had already known that this was coming, because before this ever happens, you guys make the calculated move to go ahead and change the restaurant name from WWF New York to the World. And at some point it's speculated that you guys knew that at least 5 years ahead of time, this was going to be a fight. So going back to what, 97, 98? Is that when you would have first heard about this legal opposition, or did it go back further than that, and that's just when it got serious and went to court?
No, both companies existed simultaneous for a while. And, we didn't change the world for that reason. The world was changed strictly so that people wouldn't view that as a WWF theme restaurant. They wanted the world. No, oh my God, shit. I'm telling you, damn it. It was to basically rebrand the club. And they wanted the club to be the World, because there was a club underneath there that they did at night, and they didn't want people to think that they were going to a WWF-themed restaurant, and they renamed it the World so that they could plug that club and not think it's the restaurant. Because there was a club and there was a restaurant. So when they rebranded it the World, that was the idea behind that.
God forbid that they have anything to do with wrestling in the fucking name. So ridiculous. So they dropped the second W, which will be one of the questions somebody asked, I'm sure, in 1979. So they go from the Worldwide Wrestling Federation from 79 up until 02. And now we're no longer the World Wrestling Federation. Now we're World Wrestling Entertainment. It was reported at the time that rebranding and the cost of this and changing all of the branding positions that the company had out there would be in the neighborhood of $50 million. Do you say that sounds in the ballpark? Is that realistic or reasonable?
Yeah, I really don't know, but I imagine it was pretty damn expensive because we had to change everything. I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than that, just due to the editing that we had to go back and do on all of the programming, taking that scratch logo with the WWF out of the programming and having to blur it and having to take it out whenever someone said WWF and having to silence it. It was a pain in the ass.
So do you know specifically, and I'm sure someone on Twitter is going to correct you with whatever you're about to say, but to the best of your recollection, do you know specifically what years have to have the logos blurred? Because it seems like as I flip through some of the network, some of it feels without rhyme or reason. Every now and again, you'll see stuff that's produced where the logos are blurred, and then seemingly around the same period, you'll see something and that doesn't happen. Is that because of a progression and the lawsuits when they were supposed to do stuff and they didn't do it and they decided to fight it, and then when they lost, they had to go back since it was under contest at that time and blur the stuff? Is that the rationale?
The only thing that I remember, and I don't even know the reason why, was the Attitude Era scratch logo. The scratch logo that had the WWF in it was the only one that I remembered that they had to go back and take out. However, in subsequent years, they've left it in.
Well, and there's some stuff from the 80s, like I'll be watching a challenge or something and they'll just blur it out. Or, you know, in an old promo, when a guy says WWF, they'll actually bleep it. And
I know, it's crazy.
But you're not specific. You're not sure about the specifics of, you know, dates and times and all that.
No, I'm not. The only one that I remember specifically that we had to on screen blur out was the scratch logo.
We're going to move on here, but I would love to do some more research on this and break all of this down, because I think this is one of the more fascinating stories. I mean, I know some people listening say, why is this a big deal? Well, imagine tomorrow if the NFL was something else. I mean, that seems kind of crazy to think about, but that's
Welcome to the NFE.
Okay, so since you did a little Vince impression there, I've got to ask, is there any irony in the fact that Vince owns everyone's name, and if they try to use a character that he owns, he sues them because it's his creation, but then he doesn't even own his own fucking name?
No, they did own their own name. It was just in dispute, and they owned it in certain parts of the world, and the whole damn thing came down to that damn internet thing that Al Gore invented. If he hadn't have fucked it all up, then we'd still have a WWF champion.
Do you have any sort of...
Jerry's buddy.
All right, I got you. I'm in the loop on this. When you had a conversation with Vince about getting the F out, what did that sound like?
Goddamn, pal, this is good for us. Don't you understand? And we'll come up with a clever way to get everybody behind it. So get the fuck out of here, pal. We'll figure it out.
Let's also mention briefly.
Hang on. You're saying it wrong, Conrad, which is something if you go back and you watch the show, you will notice. It's not get the F out. It's get the F out. Or get the F out. It's always there was a guy. There was a guy. God, I wish I could remember his name. But we ran through this list of producers and directors one time that Vince wanted to import from Hollywood because that's what we needed. We needed some Hollywood, some fresh ideas. And the guy came in. He was a producer, great producer too, and a great guy. Cannot remember his fucking name. But he was one of the cool ones of this group that we brought in. And he said something that stuck with Vince forever. And I thought of it when I was listening to the promos for Get the F Out. Was, you can say anything, eyebrows up, and give it a different meaning. If you say it with eyebrows up, it takes the edge off of things.
Give me an example.
Well, you could say, "Get the F out," or you could say, "Get the F out." See how I raised my eyebrows there?
You almost did your Mexican voice right there.
Well, they say a lot of things eyebrows up.
How
So eyebrows up just lightens the mood a little bit.
How would the Spanish announce team remind their viewers at home about the name change?
WWF no, get el F auto. WWE.
Yeah, this is not a racist show at all. Let's talk
Now,
about.
that's not racist, man. That's just taking care of our Hispanic friends and let them know that, man, we're on their side of just speaking a little Espanol there. Habla en Espanol.
And who's your favorite Mexican friend?
Oh, my good buddy, Dave Silva.
The gentleman
Rock
who
on.
does all the graphics and makes us look good here on the show, at DG Silva 1975. We need to go ahead and talk about the British Bulldog briefly. I want to cover him long form at some point, but let's mention him here because he passed away on the 17th, so just 2 days prior to this. So, of course, the pay-per-view's on a Sunday. Bulldog leaves us on Friday. The only mention of Davey Boy was a shot of a fan holding up a sign that says R.I.P. Davey Boy. I felt this was a little weird that they didn't acknowledge it during the pay-per-view. Is Vince trying to distance himself from the circumstances that maybe surrounded Davey Boy's death here?
I don't really recall because I thought that we did and I don't know this, I should, but I thought we did a tribute on Raw. And maybe he felt that the big tribute would be on Raw and not to do it here. But I still think we should have done it here.
I agree. That's the reason we're covering it here. And I'm sure we'll talk about the British Bulldog at some point in long form on the show. So stick around towards the end of the show, and we're going to give you topics as to how you can go ahead and vote on what you want to hear next week. But let's get right into it. The first thing we see on the actual pay-per-view is a video kind of hyping up Judgment Day. And this is during a time when the pay-per-views were really, really heavily themed, and they do different sets each week or each month. And then there was eventually a departure made from that. Why did the company move away from doing these sort of brand-specific, theme-specific sets that were so wildly different in the late 90s and early 2000s to now it's the exact same every time?
Probably cost, but for me, I preferred when we did the theme stuff because it made every single one of them look different, and you just got into the theme for the event, and it didn't feel like what you just said, like every other one, so that your pay-per-view could look like Raw, that looks like SmackDown, that looks like whatever the hell else they're doing at the time. So it was probably just cost and giving everything a cleaner look. However, I really felt that the themed pay-per-views and making everything around it a part of that theme worked best.
Yeah, I liked when they all look different, and if you want something that looks a little different, just go to brucepritchard.com. We've got a whole lot of brand new shirts over there, including 9 brand new Dr. Tom shirts. Check it out at brucepritchard.com. Maybe the hottest shirt going right now, George the Rat. One of the more popular stories we've ever had here on the show. It's available in the Cornette episode in our archives. You can also check out the brand new Alabama Dream, the classics I Used to Be Over, No Yob, Rib'em, Pronouns Pal, the Brother Love shirt, Rumor and Innuendo, If I Wanted to Hook You, You'd Be Hooked, the Box of Gimmicks, I Don't Know What You Do for This Company, Doot Doot Doot, No Gas Needed, Chicken Salad, Not a Rib, Must Pose, and more. Pick it up right now over at brucepritchard.com. You can even pick up one of the more underrated shirts, at least in my mind, the I'm Fired shirt. It's all available right now at brucepritchard.com. And when you pick up one of those shirts, Bruce, what happens?
Well, I have an announcement about that, Conrad. So I'm calling folks back. I will call you. I will call you and say thank you. And I noticed a lot of people say, hey, man, I haven't got my call. For some reason, a ton of my emails that I get when people actually purchase a shirt over at brucepritchard.com were going to my spam folder. So, needless to say, Bruce has a lot of catching up to do because I found a ton of orders in my spam folder. And as you know, I am technology challenged.
Oh, yeah.
There were a bunch in my regular folder, but then a bunch in my spam folder. I'm going to get to you this weekend come hell or high water. So if you bought a shirt and you haven't gotten a call, you're going to get a call this weekend. And what do they do, Conrad, if they see a private number? Better answer it.
Yeah, you should answer it because it might be Bruce Prichard who's going to call and sing or tell you lies or whatever you prefer. It's brucepritchard.com. Hit it up right now. So back to the pay-per-view here. One of the things I've thought that was interesting about the imagery is, man, they're really focusing on the noose and someone is being hanged. And this doesn't feel like something that the company would ever do now. But they were very comfortable with the imagery of the American Badass, the Undertaker, and this noose. Do you remember there being any sort of concern as to whether or not this would be a good idea?
Yeah, there was. And as you notice, there wasn't anybody hanging anywhere in any of the imagery.
No,
however,
Boss Man wasn't there.
He wasn't there in 2002, damn it. That never happened. That didn't exist. That was way back when. But the nooses were strategically placed, and it was so damn funny. It's like, okay, well, there's nobody hanging. But they were strategically placed so that whenever you put an image in front of them, it looked like that image was hanging. And I'm like, okay, we don't want to do nooses. We don't want to do people hanging from nooses, but we have nooses and we position people so that it looks like they're hanging from a noose. Roll Tide.
What a Vinceism right there.
Roll Tide, pal.
I wasn't ready for that one. Let's get into the pay-per-view. Man, what a match this is on paper. It was actually a good match too, but when you really think about just the way this card stacks up, it's outstanding. There's one dark match that night. William Regal takes on and defeats D'Lo Brown. This is for the European title. They go about 6.5 minutes. We have not spent a lot of time here on the show talking about William Regal or D'Lo Brown. Do you have any fun Regal or D'Lo stories you could share with us quickly?
William Regal, just one of the best damn all-around workers that I've ever had the pleasure to work with. A great guy, had a shitload of issues early on in his tenure at the WWE, but he's a success story of the drug program and the wellness program in WWE. He's at least, look, I'm going to point at him. I'm going to take some of the credit. He's one of my success stories that I am proud to say that I kind of helped him through his addiction and different things. And he's living a much better life now and doing great. D'Lo Brown, underrated, and in another one, a great guy.
You got any fun D'Lo stories? I feel like D'Lo would be fun to travel with. Did you ever spend any time on the road with D'Lo?
A little bit. You know, the majority of the time that I spent on the road with D'Lo was in TNA, believe it or not. And we just like to be able to get to the Fogo de Chao for lunch, so you'd get the cheap lunch buffet. But nah, D'Lo's a great guy. Last I heard, I saw him at WrestleCon, and if you're ever out in Vegas, you can go by and see him and the Godfather at Cheetah's. So roll Tide to that.
Man, you took the words right out of my mouth. I didn't know he was doing the shoe show these days. That's a fun life.
You know it.
So let's get to the match, though, that we saw on pay-per-view. Our very first match there is Eddie Guerrero, who is the Intercontinental Champion, and he's going to be defending his title against Rob Van Dam. And Van Dam had been with the company at this point for a little while, but he was starting to get a bigger push in 2002. Before we talk about the match itself, who would have been a Van Dam advocate in the company?
Paul Heyman, sir. I think everybody was a Van Dam advocate. There were talent that sometimes cringed at having to work with Rob because Rob could be a little snug, but everything Rob gave out, Rob would take. And he was just a really laid back guy, kind of like what you see on TV. That's what you got in real life with Rob Van Dam. But his work was definitely solid, man. He could be a little snug. And Paul Heyman pushed for Van Dam big time. And I think the audience pushed for him as well.
You and I got to hang out with a guy who's on the roster now at Wale Mania this year. And years ago, I remember at a show, him giving the advice to another guy who was working a match against Van Dam at TV. And he pulls him over to the side and he says, "Hey, here's a pro tip for you. Get your fucking hands up."
That's true.
I don't know why, but the little peek behind the curtain of, "Oh, you're wrestling Van Dam? Hey, man, word to the wise, get your fucking hands up." I thought that was phenomenal because as a fan at home, I always felt like, damn, he's really doing that. Well, yeah, he is. This is a fun match and maybe one of the more underrated matches on the card. As we talked about, what a stacked roster this is, man. When Regal and D'Lo's your dark match and your first match on the card is Eddie Guerrero and Rob Van Dam. This is a battle of the Frog Splash versus the 5-Star Splash. That's what they're trying to craft this to be. Meltzer would say it was better than their last match, and he gave it 3 stars. I think it could have been rated higher. There's a lot of fun little innovative spots in here. It runs about 10 minutes. What did you think of the match when you watched it back this week, Bruce? What were your takeaways?
Oh my God, I loved it. I truly loved it. I stopped. You know, sometimes when I watch these things, I'll do other things. I stopped and watched this match. I forgot just how great Eddie Guerrero was, and I forgot how damn good Rob could be. Rob sometimes will wrestle to his opponent's strengths. And in this case, I felt Eddie really brought Rob up, and they had a great match. Both had the same damn haircut, shaved on the sides and long on top. But who would have thought that a few years from this point that we would see Eddie Guerrero as the WWE champion and be headlining, you know, pay-per-views and doing everything that Eddie was doing. It was absolutely just incredible to watch this match and see these two guys go after it.
The finish comes when they're doing some really, really good mat wrestling, and Eddie Guerrero starts doing his lying and cheating and stealing gimmick, and then goes ahead and gets a victory with a backslide, putting his feet on the ropes. This comes right after Van Dam couldn't make the backslide work, but he didn't have the leverage of the ropes. So we kind of started talking about this match, referencing who would have been a fan of Van Dam behind the scenes. Who would have been anti-Van Dam, and why was it Triple H?
I don't know that Triple H was anti-Van Dam. I think there was a certain amount of guys that would cringe getting in the ring with Rob just because he would be snubbed. But I don't know that there was anybody necessarily against him. What would happen sometimes is if you had one person, for example, Paul Heyman, really pushing for you really hard, that could work against you.
Because there were other people
who... If that person was out of favor, then that worked against you.
And when you say worked against you, do you mean with the boys or with Vince? Man,
all the above.
Okay. I guess my question specifically was, did Triple H just automatically oppose anything that Heyman said and thought Heyman was a fucking idiot and just discounted anything he thought? Or would Vince say, at all. "Oh, that sounds like a Heyman idea"?
No, not at all. And it wouldn't be sounding like a Heyman idea. You'd be hearing it from Heyman. So sometimes how Paul would present things would turn Vince off. And if he was not feeling Paul that day, then anything Paul pitched.
Okay, I got it. So when the word gets out that Vince doesn't necessarily have a high opinion of Heyman's ideas, then some of the kiss-ass crew decides to fall in line. And if Vince hates it, then I've got to hate it too, because that's what's better for me, to agree with Vince.
I'm sure a lot of people felt that way. They're going to look for the boss's lead and go that way. And a lot of times it's simply in the presentation. And for example, if I was on the outs at that point, anything I brought up was shit.
Well, it still is. You used to have a relationship with a lot of the guys backstage, but in recent years, it's come out that Van Dam maybe wasn't the biggest Bruce Prichard fan. Do you remember being cross with him about anything in particular?
No, and I don't know that Van Dam is either a Bruce Prichard fan or not a Bruce Prichard fan. I know what you're talking about, the pick a hand story that Rob told, and I remember that very well. Because
tell everybody, you're speaking inside baseball. Tell everybody what pick a hand is and briefly share that story with us.
No, there's a famous story that Rob told a backstage worker in ECW one time, pick a hand. And the guy was like, what?
Taz.
Pick a hand, right or left.
Why won't you just, it's Taz. Taz and Van Dam had an issue.
Hang on. No, see, no, the original story was a guy that worked backstage, a stagehand guy that worked backstage or a ring crew guy. Because Van Dam told me the story. I asked him the story, point blank. And it was a ring crew guy that Van Dam did this to originally. And that's where the original story came from. I don't know if it actually happened to Taz. I think it did. But Van Dam told him to pick a hand. And the guy was like, what do you mean? He said, just right or left. There were rumors that were going around apparently that Rob's not that kind of guy. Rob's real straightforward, easy, mellow guy. And if you pick left hand, then you got slapped with the left hand. You pick right, you got slapped with the right. That was what pick a hand was. And you're referring to one of those shoot interviews where they were running down names on the pick a hand deal, and Rob threw me into that. There was a period where we were looking to get more out of Rob personality-wise and emotion-wise. And I came to Rob and I said, what pisses you off? And he wouldn't tell me. I said, well, I'm trying to figure out, man, how I can, get more emotion out of you. And I'm trying to dig in, trying to get to know you better so that we can do more here, so that we can get a little bit more range of emotion. And Rob just flat out refused, because his feeling was that if I knew what pissed him off and I knew what made him tick emotionally, then I would have power over him. And he didn't like giving anybody that power. On the outside, Rob was zen, and Rob was fine with that. But I persisted. And I can be persistent sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So I just persisted to where he wanted to kill me. Well, last time me and Rob were cool, I think. He's cool with me. Good. Last time I saw him, he was cool.
Well, somebody that you didn't ever have a lot of those uncomfortable situations with, and we've talked about briefly on the show before, is Eddie Guerrero. If you'd like to hear more about Eddie Guerrero, please check out the Radicals episode, which is available in our archives. It's probably the episode that helped first put us on the map. We'd greatly appreciate your feedback on that. So go check out the Radicals episode to hear all about the time he and a few other fellows made national wrestling news when they jumped from WCW to the WWF, and then kind of what happened with their careers briefly as they finished up. But you've probably got a fun Eddie Guerrero story you could share with us right now. Hit us with one.
Well, you know what, Conrad? Actually, see, you said I didn't. I had plenty of those moments with Eddie Guerrero where he wanted to kill me. And as a matter of fact, one of them was on Mother's Day. Fast forward a few years, we were in El Paso, Texas, which is Eddie's hometown, and where his mother lived, where he grew up, where his family was from. And we did a presentation in the ring, and the whole idea behind it was Eddie was getting ready to wrestle JBL, and Eddie was going to give his mother flowers for Mother's Day in the ring. So they get in the ring, and as Eddie gives his mom flowers, JBL goes to grab the flowers and grab his mom, and Eddie's mom was going to feign as if she was having chest pains. Well, lo and behold, as she was feigning to go ahead and have chest pain, she was so worked up with this whole damn thing. Throughout the day, we went over it and over it and over it and over it and over it. She actually had a damn heart attack. A minor heart attack, but she actually had a damn heart attack. And we had the medics there. We had her own personal doctor there. We had Chavo. We had Chavito. Everybody's there. And in the middle of this damn thing, man, The doctor's like, we have to get her out of here. I think she's really having a heart attack. And Eddie wanted to come across the gurney at me because somehow now this was all my fault. Now, I might have suggested it to begin with, and I might have produced it, might have laid everything out and said, hey, wouldn't it be great to do it in El Paso and all this shit? But, yeah, Eddie wanted to kill me, man. And well,
I'll tell you what, you've probably got some better Mother's Day advice these days. How can we make sure that all of our Something to Wrestle With moms are having the best Mother's Day possible and that our listeners look like superheroes?
That's simple. Just go to proflowers.com, vato.
Don't forget all the special women in your life. We're talking about your mom, your grandmother, even your wife. Go ahead and hook them up this Mother's Day, and proflowers.com makes it easy. You're going to be able to go ahead and give them the best gift of all, what they really are looking for. Fresh flowers, a huge bouquet, and they make it very affordable. You see, when you send the 100 Blooms for Mom bouquet from proflowers.com this Mother's Day, you're going to make a real impression. And don't forget, as always, it comes with a free glass vase for just $19.99 plus shipping and handling. And if you really want to make a statement, you can upgrade to a premium vase, and they'll include a gourmet box of chocolates for just $10 more. All you've got to do is choose the delivery date you want, and Pro Flowers does the rest. They guarantee that their product will arrive fresh and beautiful, and they'll stay that way for at least 7 days or your money back. It doesn't get any easier than this. If you're really ready to go ahead and finally show Mom some appreciation for that thankless job she's done for you your entire life, all you've got to do is go to proflowers.com. They're going to get it right for you. And I suggest you go ahead and do the 100 Blooms for Mom with a free glass vase for only $19.99. All you've got to do, go check out proflowers.com. Then click the microphone in the top right-hand corner and use our code. What is it, Bruce?
WWE. And remember, that's proflowers.com and code WWE. When you click on the microphone, now this stunning bouquet, it sells out fast, so be sure and order today. And for our Spanish-speaking friends, the only way to get 100 Blooms for Mom with a free glass vase, starting only $19.99, is to visit proflowers.com. You click on the mic, it's up on the top right-hand corner, and use my code WWE. That's WWE in English. That's proflowers.com, code WWE, and you click on the mic, and hey guys, man, this bouquet, it sells out really fast, man, so do it today and order today.
Hey, I tell you what, man, Pro Flowers is one of our longest running sponsors here on the show. We absolutely love their product. Bruce uses it, I use it, we want you to use it. It's affordable, it's fast, it's easy. You can afford at $19.99 to go ahead and send this to your wife or your girlfriend or your mom or your grandma, everybody in your life, and still keep it looking good and economical. So go ahead, check it out, support the show, proflowers.com. Click that microphone and use the promo code WWE. And when you do this, be sure to tweet us at the show. Man, we would love to hear that you're supporting our sponsors. He's at Bruce Prichard. I'm at Hey, it's Conrad. And of course, the show is at Prichard Show. And we love Pro Flowers, and you will too.
It will save your ass.
Oh,
Send
man.
something to all your women.
Next up, we've got one of those really weird Vince McMahon segments on the show. This does not age well. Do you know where I'm going next here, Bruce?
Oh, just go.
Brother Devon, not the Dudley version, but the minister version, is standing next to Dave Bautista, who is at this point Deacon Bautista, who is carrying a collection plate that is chained around his neck. Sleeves are cut off of his suit. The very, very Roll Tide Stacy Keibler is there. And of course, Vince McMahon is there. And Stacy is about to take on Trish Stratus. And Devon wants to go ahead and say a prayer. Everyone bows their head and closes their eyes. Vince does this only briefly. And in the middle of the prayer, can't help himself and leans over and checks out Stacy's ass mid-prayer.
Wouldn't you?
Then he hurries the finish along. The prayer's taking too long for Vince, and he hurries him along. I know that this is the Mr. McMahon character, but based on everything you've told us about Vince McMahon, this feels like Vince McMahon.
Sometimes producing is easy.
So what do I need to do here, Ruse? Just be yourself, boss.
You got it, pal.
You gonna give me something on this, or did it, at the time, did you think him hurrying along a prayer and checking out a chick's ass in the middle of a prayer was appropriate?
I thought it was very appropriate. Look, hang on. Now, see, here, this is going to sound horrible, but I'm one of those guys that when you go to, since I don't really go to church, but you go to a funeral, all right? Or you go to one, and they tell you, bow your head and pray. I'm that guy that's got his head up looking around at everybody and seeing the other, 3 or 4 people that are doing the same thing. So those people exist, and you know who you are. So, yeah, the suggestion was maybe how long are you going to bow your head here? And so it worked. It was the Mr. McMahon character. He wouldn't bow his head for too long. He would let everybody think that he was doing it to appease, but the real guy would come out and have to check out the assets.
So much of this is weird and kind of ages differently because it's, they have an evil minister character. I mean, this pastor character is not a babyface. He's a heel. And then you've got the owner of the company, kind of hurrying along what a lot of people take very seriously, including the majority of Americans, are Christian. And, you've got not only that, but now you've got the owner of the company checking out a woman's ass. None of that would play on TV in 2017 for the company.
I think maybe not for the company. However, and not meaning to offend anyone, this is just simply real life. Dig down deep inside of your real self. When you are sitting there, you're listening to the minister sometimes, and they can get a little long-winded, and you know that your favorite football team is getting ready to kick off in 20 minutes. Don't you sometimes kind of wish you could hurry them along? Go, come on, man, get to the point. Amen, I do, and let's move on. A little bit.
Well,
deep down.
Whether that is the case or not, it's interesting that the company is making such different choices then than they are now. I'm not trying to dig into, anybody's religious beliefs. I'm just saying they would shy away so much now, but back then, man, they're just wallering all in it.
You think? Yeah, a little bit. Different times.
Any sort of, does anybody kind of raise an eyebrow when Vince is doing this stuff with Stacy where he's, checking her out and all that? None of that. I mean, because at this point, the company's publicly traded. None of that raises an eyebrow with anybody at the time?
No, because it was the Mr. McMahon character, and that's the character that he portrayed, and that was true to the character.
It's amazing how different America is now, and the product is as a result of that. Next up, though,
how different he is now.
Sure. I mean, this is interesting. If you'd like to, I encourage you, if you haven't already, go check out that segment. It's something else, man. Next up, Stacy Keibler, Trish Stratus. That's our match, but I guess what I want to talk about is Devon and Deacon. They come out early to watch the match, and eventually Bubba is involved here because they're finally breaking up the Dudley Boys. So we're going to progress the storyline, but let's talk a little bit about Dave Bautista coming to the main roster.
Dave had been in OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling. Leviathan. I was trying to think of his name. I wanted to come in with a big Leviathan. And that was a Jim Cornette creation of Leviathan with Sin, who is Corny's significant other, lovely lady. And Dave had, wore the contacts and was this big beast monster that came from the D. So it had some overtones to it already. And Brother Deacon or Brother Devon to have this evil deacon, this big bastard looking that guarded the money. It got him on TV. That's all I can say for it. It wasn't a great introduction. I think if hindsight were 2020 and we had it all to do over again, certainly would not have debuted Dave Bautista as the Deacon. But it was a way to get him on the air, and it was a way to get his ass out there, and let's find out what he can do. He was very green at the time, and his Deacon character is probably closer to the character that he plays on Guardians of the Galaxy than just Dave Bautista, but it was a way to get Dave Bautista on TV.
Oh man, I can't wait to talk about Batista long form. We've had him on the poll before, but really talking about the evolution of this character and how it came about, man, I want to dig into that. Of course, this match kind of is what it is. Trish Stratus is largely given credit for being one of the real innovators in women's wrestling, because she kind of was a notch above many of the others. And it seems like we always hear her and Trish are probably the ones who get a lot of the credit for the women's revolution that we enjoy now. What was the reality of their positioning on the card here? How the company saw women's wrestling, her and her match with Stacy Keibler. What did you think of that? Give me something about this era of women's wrestling.
Well, when Trish first started, Trish was god awful horrible. Absolutely terrible. But
now, in fairness, most people are god awful horrible when they first start. I mean, that's not necessarily unique to Trish Stratus.
No, but by the time that they come to the show, they are somewhat polished and they have their skills underneath them. Trish did not when she first came to us.
And why is that?
And she was a fitness model, and the idea was to bring her in and use her as a manager at first. But then she got rushed in pretty quickly into the ring, and she wasn't quite ready. But I got to say, man, I'm going to give a big salute to Ron Hutchison up in Canada, who helped train Trish and really brought her up to speed quickly. And Ron had worked with Trish, but it's also a testament to Trish Stratus, who busts her ass. She was determined as anybody I have ever met in my life to be the best. Her, from the first day that I met her till, today, she probably wants to be the best at yoga and everything else she does. She just wanted to be the best and was willing to do whatever it takes to be the very best and put the work in. So she's one of those success stories that if you were to judge her from day one when they told me she was ready to what she finally came, and especially at this point, it was a night and day difference. But the girls at this point were still kind of viewed as eye candy, and let's have, we'll have a Divas match to get it on the card. And let the guys look at the girls. And they were TNA at that point, and it wasn't nearly what the division is today.
They don't go very long here. Trish has Bubba, of course, as we said, and Stacy has Devon and Deacon, and they go just about 3 minutes or so before the finish comes. And I think the thing that stands out the most to me in this match, especially watching it back, is that Deacon Batista sneaks inside the ring when the ref is distracted and body slams the shit out of Trish Stratus. But then Stacy makes the cover and Trish kicks out. I don't know why this was amusing to me, but Batista body slam, process that. And it is not, it is a hell of a body slam. And
it was cemento.
And she kicks out. Stacy then accidentally clotheslined Deacon, which is hilarious. And this allowed Trish to hit Stacy with a bulldog, maybe not the best looking bulldog in the world, for the pin. It was described as being not good, but better than you think with Stacy in there, 3/4 of a star. What are your 3 favorite Stacy Keibler matches, Bruce?
Does this one count? Yeah, anything involving lingerie with Stacy and Tori, I think would have to be my 3 favorite.
Well,
I love Stacy. You know what, man? She's
doesn't?
another one that was just you won't find a sweeter person.
Who doesn't love Stacy Keibler? Shout out to David Flair. Roll Tide on that. Was there ever any sort of question from any of the talent in the back? Or is it just Vince has got his mind made up? He wants these model type girls wrestling, as opposed to just being in a Miss Elizabeth, Sunny, Sable, original Sable type role.
They wanted beautiful women competing, but they didn't want those women to compete like men. If they have an athletic contest, then it's like, why? I might as well just watch 2 guys. And that was shared by several people, I think, that felt that if the women actually had a competitive match, that no one would want to see it. I thought the opposite. I thought that if you have 2 beautiful women competing, man, I'm into that. Because I like to watch competition and I like to watch beautiful women. Now, if you have women that look like guys, wrestling like guys and punching each other in the face, I don't like that as much. But I do enjoy watching women compete. Yeah.
So next up on the show, we've got a backstage segment. And this is where we see Ric Flair hanging out with Arn Anderson, and then an interaction with Vince where the storyline is these guys really don't like each other. From your memory, what was the best part about working with Vince and Flair on these segments? I mean, these guys seem like they had natural chemistry, but they could pull off this stuff with anybody or everybody, but they've both got somebody to work against here, character wise. And I always enjoyed their interactions here.
The best part about working with them is they were easy. You could give them what you wanted and they understood it, and you were going to get it out of them every single time. It was the facial expressions when Mr. McMahon hugged Flair, and it was the happy when he went in for the hug, and when he got around, you saw the real emotion of Vince, just thoroughly disgusted at having to actually touch Ric Flair. Ugh. And then Flair, the smiling once Vince left, kind of he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, so they're both pretending to be friends here and hate each other. So it's a fun time. Next up, though, something that many people probably didn't remember was on this card. We've got the Hardy Boys, both Matt and Jeff, taking on Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman. That's right. Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman are a tag team, and this is Brock Lesnar's rookie year. And even back in 2002, he was being programmed as a monster with Paul Heyman as his advocate. But here, they're actually a tag team. Of course, Heyman is on the ring apron in the corner. It's just as comfortable as he could be.
Almost as comfortable as he might if he had went to sofasandmoreonline.com, Conrad.
Hypothetically, if Paul Heyman was an advocate for sofasandmoreonline.com, what might that sound like?
Allow me this volley, sir. Sofasandmoreonline.com has been serving East Tennessee for 22 years, but now they're offering curbside delivery to just about anywhere in the continental United States of America.
All right, now that sounds like it's something for me. I have to admit, I like to find my stuff online and then just have it shipped. But, Paul, is this stuff like Red Rooster level quality here?
No, sir. Absolutely not, sir. Most of the products are made right here in the USA with brands that you can trust, like Lazy Boy, Ashley, England, Von Bassett, and Catnapper. You can't even customize your very own furniture.
What about mattresses, Paul? Can you help us get a good deal there too? I need a new mattress.
No. Nobody will beat our prices on mattresses, sir. Whether you're looking for Serta's iComfort, Tempur-Pedic, or any other quality brand, we can guarantee a quality night's sleep, sir.
All right, but do we have some sort of hookup where we could help our Something to Wrestle With listeners with an even better deal?
about a coupon that doesn't expire, sir?
What do you mean doesn't expire? You mean like Vince McMahon made a deal with the devil so he will never expire?
Exactly my point, sir. Something to Wrestle with listeners should just go to sofasandmoreonline.com right now and click on the Contact Us form. Just complete the form and put Prichard, that's Prichard, in the subject line. Then, Sofas and More Online will email you a coupon exclusive to Something to Wrestle with listeners that never expires, sir. Whether you're ready to buy today, the near future, or just know that when you need to buy furniture in the future, you want the best possible price. Just go to sofasandmoreonline.com to get this coupon that never expires.
Paul, I'm not going to say that you have a reputation for stretching the truth a little bit, but this sounds too good to be true. A coupon that never expires? I mean, what's the coupon good for? Like $5 off? Is this a rib?
Not a rib, my good sir. How does 20% off sound?
Hang on. All I've got to do is go to sofasandmoreonline.com, complete the form on the Contact Us page, mention Prichard Show, and then I get a 20% coupon right to my email that never expires, where I could get 20% off my entire order. Couldn't that mean I saved thousands of dollars with one click at sofasandmoreonline.com?
Exactly! Sofasandmoreonline.com has designers who can make furnishing your home fast and easy. They help you find exactly what you need for your home, even custom furniture. So whether you're ready now or later, it's free! Free! My favorite word to claim this 20% coupon at sofasandmoreonline.com. The coupon won't expire, but this offer will. Get the coupon before it's too late. Hurry! Hurry to sofasandmoreonline.com right now. Just complete the Contact Us form and be sure to put Prichard, that is Prichard, in the subject line before it is too late, my good sir.
I got to tell you, they've got all the brands that you'll enjoy. I've got Lazy Boy recliners in my home theater. I actually use one of these iComfort mattresses. They've got all the cool products, and you can check it out online, figure out exactly what you like, and then they'll hook you up with a great deal, and then just ship the stuff. It's the worst to get drug around from furniture store to furniture store, trying out stuff with your spouse. It's a lot easier. Hey, honey, what do you think of this stuff? Boom, it's on the way. But what I like better than all that, 20% off. I really am shocked that they can actually do that. Somehow, some way, they're going to hook you up with a great deal. You're going to love it. It's sofasandmoreonline.com. That's sofasandmoreonline.com. Just click the Contact Us form, complete it, use that Prichard logo or that Prichard tagline, and they'll go ahead and get you this coupon direct to your email, and it doesn't expire. So even if you're not in the market for furniture not right now, you will be at some point. Why would you go pay retail later when you can go ahead and guarantee a good deal forever? It doesn't expire. Sofasandmoreonline.com. Just get it sent to your email. I'm telling you, it's the best way to support the show and get a great deal. Now, they were doing a fun deal here with Paul Heyman standing in the corner and Brock doing all the heavy lifting. And they're really doing a great job here of painting Brock as the unstoppable monster. The match doesn't even go 5 minutes, and he lays waste to both of the Hardy Boys and allows Heyman to give him the pin. Does this not kind of kill the Hardy Boys in the process? Who would have been such a big advocate for Brock? And is there any hesitation to essentially squashing the Hardys the way you have here?
What other finish would you expect, my good sir? I am shocked the match went as long as it did. Me and Brock Lesnar against the Harvey Boys? Please. Yeah, it was Brock's coming out party.
Did the Hardys have an issue being destroyed 2-on-1 here?
No, it was. Are you kidding me? It was really kind of like 2.5 against 2. You had Heyman over there. Brock's 1.5. Paul is a worthy adversary. Hey, I got to tell you, man. Watching Paul run around the ring and slide into the ring, I couldn't do that today. Okay, so I probably never could do it. But, yeah, give him props.
No, I'm not burying.
He ran around a corner of the ring.
I'm a huge Paul Heyman fan. You know that. I'm not burying Paul. I'm just saying he didn't do anything to the very end of the match, and he comes in and gets the cover.
He won the match.
Yeah. And I'm curious, was this something, and we've never really heard about this, but do you remember having a conversation where Paul actually wanted to be an in-ring performer? I mean, he did some silly stuff with Cornette and Missy Hyatt and stuff like that. But do you remember ever having a conversation with him about him wanting to be an in-ring performer?
Look, all of us that are in the business, me included, we all wanted to be that in-ring performer. We all saw ourselves as the world heavyweight champion at some point in our career. So the desire is there. And if it isn't there, then you should get the hell out of the business. So yeah, Paul had a desire to be an in-ring performer without a doubt.
What'd you think of this match? I mean, obviously it did a great job as far as establishing Lesnar as a super monster.
It was short and sweet, to the point. It was designed for one thing, and that was to get Brock Lesnar over. But as I said before, I chuckled watching Paul run around the ring and slide into the ring. I was like, all right, hey, good for you, Paul, man. Way to go. But when they knocked Paul's hat off of his head, and Jerry Lawler's response, oh my God, look at his head, look at his head, look at his head, because he had the skullet.
Yeah.
Just, bald on top. And by this time, he had that sweat going. So it's like probably a frothy skullet. And the stringy hair that was hanging down. And Paul was not... Hey, Paul, this is Bruce talking here. I mean, Paul's not an attractive man.
Oh, my gosh.
And then you get him sweaty, and you knock his hat off of his head. It's kind of scary. But my favorite part is I was watching, I had to pause it at some point in there, and I paused it at a part where Paul's head predominantly filled the screen.
That's a Vince shot.
And you can see the dye that is on his scalp, not on his hair because he doesn't have any hair there, but it's kind of like the old Jack Lanza Wahoo McDaniel spray on black shit. And it just looked so ungodly, unbelievably bad. Of just the painted on blackness in Paul's head, trying to give the illusion of hair.
You know he listens to the show.
You see the gray hairs coming out.
You know he listens, and you're burying him right now.
I'm not burying Paul. Paul, you have no fucking hair, and the hair you have is gray. Let it go, buddy. I know Vince is saying, God damn, Paul, dye that shit. But, just dye the hair, man, not the scalp. Hey, Paul looks a lot better now that he's kind of shaved the top of his head and looks his age. He's doing very well. I'm a big fan of Paul Heyman.
My goodness. I did not expect that.
What?
I just didn't.
My kids give me shit every time I go get a haircut and they see that gray hair I have. Both of them.
Let's talk about the next segment. Let's move along here. Well, I guess before we do, we should address the chants that were going on. You couldn't really avoid this. Huge Goldberg chants here early. Of course, this is before Goldberg comes into the company. Was there any sort of concern or consideration that, hey, here's a big jacked up guy in black trunks and black boots just laying waste to people? People are going to compare him to Goldberg. Did you guys kind of have in your mind's eye, hey, if we're ever able to sign him, this would be a good match for us to put together? We all know what happened, but at this point, did you think that you were going to get this criticism or feedback from the fans and that they would kind of compare the two? And did you have that in mind for a future match already?
No. The whole idea was Brock Lesnar was fresh and new. And the idea was to build him. There was no desire or thought at that time of doing anything with Goldberg.
All right. Next up, we've got, I don't know, another kind of weird exchange. We've got Booker T backstage in an NWO shirt. He's being interviewed, and then he says that he is a pro, and when he was chosen to be an NWO member, because he's joined the NWO recently, he accepted, but he's still kind of acting like a goof. And then suddenly, a very attractive woman appears on screen, and he hits on her. She whispers something to him. He takes her Marriott key, and we assume that he is going to her hotel room. He is well past the point of giddy here. He is pretty fired up about this. Do you remember shooting these type of segments? And in my head, Vince has to be there producing it. Do I have that right?
I think Vince might have been with us producing this one, but then again, maybe not. I don't really recall, but this was a Brian Gewertz idea. So old BFG, this was one of his because he loved the Gold Dust Booker T dynamic and chemistry that those guys had, and he loved writing for it. And this was just an extension of that. So
before we get to what you're referencing there, who was the girl in the skit? Where'd y'all find her?
She was just a model. Models Are Us.
Models Are Us. Okay. I didn't expect that. Next up, we've got a pretty fun match, even in hindsight here. It goes kind of long, about 15 and a half minutes, but we've got Stone Cold Steve Austin in a handicap match taking on Big Show and Ric Flair. And there's so many stars on this card. I mean, we've been running through here. This is just another example. This is the fifth match on the card if you count the dark match, which was on Sunday Night Heat, so it's not really a dark match. You know what I mean? Steve Austin is here, and this is something we'll probably spend a few minutes on. But he's programmed against Flair and Big Show. Does Austin feel slighted a little bit, being middle of the card? What's going on in his life? As a reminder, this is his last pay-per-view before he walks out, not wanting to do the JOB for Brock Lesnar. What was Austin like to deal with here? Is he happy with his positioning on the card? And if he is the biggest star in the history of the business, why is he in the middle of the card like this?
Well, it's just simply timing on everything. Hogan's back. Steve, I think at this point was feeling maybe not as he was the most important thing in the company at that point. And
it's hard to argue, is it?
Well, yeah, but you also have a shitload of talent that you're trying to get over, new guys that you're trying to bring up. So you have to shuffle a little bit. I don't think that being in the ring with Ric Flair and the Big Show is a slight, especially with the outcome of the match. But it was probably a way to just, appease Steve, but he was involved in the top storyline on Raw. And this was the top storyline on Raw, really, at that point.
It feels a little bit like what he tried to get away from in WCW. And of course, we all know that he was fired from WCW, but when he goes to ECW, he would start to tell his story. And we've heard it years since where he would be promised to be moved up the card and promised different spots. And that never really came to fruition because guys like Hogan were still on top and they were not willing to give their spots up. And that's back in, 94, 95. Well, here we are in 2002 after he has helped make Vince McMahon a billionaire, and he's in the middle of the card working with Ric Flair, and on top, Hulk Hogan is champion in the main event. It feels a little bit like everything he tried to escape from WCW, at least from a fan perspective. I know he wins the handicap match here, and the match is super fun for what it is. You get to see Ric Flair before, Rick in 02 was still one hell of a performer, at least in my perspective. Maybe not the guy we all want to remember from 85, 86, 88, 89. but still putting on really fun matches. And it's fun to see him work with Stone Cold, because I think a lot of people just really gravitate towards Steve's character and persona and beer drinking, but man, he could sell. And this Austin Flair series of exchanges they have here is super fun to me. What'd you think of the match, Bruce?
Same thing. I was going to use fun as a descriptor as well, because it was a fun match to watch, and it was fun to watch Rick and Steve interact, but also how they got the Giant involved and kept the Giant a Giant. So the psychology of the match for me worked, I think, on paper when you look at it and go, God damn, how does Steve Austin beat Ric Flair and the Giant? It all worked, and they threw X-Pac in there at the very end of the deal. But it was just that. It was a fun match. But again, going back to the point of Steve, at some point you have to bring other people in. You got to move people around on the roster a little bit. And maybe Steve didn't feel that it was time for him to move down or be moved around at all. And that was during the time that he and Vince got into their disagreement for wanting to move Brock Lesnar up the ladder some and using Steve for that catapult. And Steve left for a little bit of time. But that shit happens with people. That happens with top talent all the time.
Before we're out of here, X-Pac hits the ring as well. All three guys catch a stunner. So Flair, X-Pac, and Show. And then Flair takes the pin. So Austin comes out victorious. And this, to me, feels like the beginning of the end, or the very end of the NWO, which is available in the archives if you'd like to hear more about the NWO in the WWE. But you can go ahead and check that out in the archives now for more details on Austin's interaction and feud with the NWO. But it's kind of funny here that, he's not only beating two guys, but essentially three. But I enjoyed the little stuff in this. Seeing Steve Austin put a figure four on Ric Flair.
Yeah.
That's fun. Seeing these guys chop each other, that's fun. It feels like it's, the best of two eras here going at it. So it's another reason to enjoy Judgment Day 2002. Next up, though, we have got Edge and Kurt Angle. And this match had a lot of heat. This is probably the match that most people remember the most about this show, which is something considering what's already happened on the show and what's still to come. It's a hair versus hair match. It goes about 15 and a half minutes. And when I first mentioned this to you at the top of the show and said, hey, what'd you think about the most for this show? What jumps to mind? And it's this match. I'm curious, whose idea was a hair versus hair match?
I think it eventually, or the initial thought was Kurt Angle. And Kurt was going bald. So Kurt just wanted to shave his head because he was already going bald. And I was like, no, wait, stop. Because I come from the school of hair matches used to mean something. Mask, an unmasking of someone used to mean something back in the day when it was RASSLIN.
That's wrestling.
So I said, let's wait and let's try and get a hair match out of this thing. And the perfect opponent was Edge. And so that's how we kind of backed into it, because Kurt, being the professional that Kurt Angle is, at least asked before he changed his appearance and just went and shaved his damn head. But he was going bald and was contemplating shaving his head. So I thought, well, shit, let's make some money out of it.
So that's a Bruce Prichard idea.
Well, it was to turn this into a hair match, a hair deal, yes, and to get his head shaving in public, if you will. But it was originally Kurt who wanted to shave his head.
I'm not mad at that. The match is a pretty fun match, and I was really impressed with the work they put forth here. And I guess I kind of forgot. It's been a while since I watched it. Edge comes out to a Rob Zombie theme. I had kind of forgotten that he did that. How did that whole Rob Zombie Edge theme music situation come to be?
It was a simple licensing deal, but Rob Zombie was a fan. We did some different things with Rob. I don't know, it was during this time. It might have been even before that Rob had done a Undertaker's haunted house and done some different things. But Rob was easy to work with and had written this, and it fit Edge. So it was strictly a licensing deal and to give Rob some exposure.
Well, it was a fun match. If you haven't watched it, as we mentioned, it's one of the more memorable matches here, and there's some crazy bumps in here. What'd you think of the match?
Absolutely loved it. This is Kurt Angle at his best, but also just shows what a great worker that Edge was as well. Kurt could do any and everything, and there was no wasted movement in anything that he did in the match. Just a simple spot of Kurt being tied up in the ropes, and the way Kurt continually fought to get out of being tied up in the ropes. And Edge with the spears, and it was just beautiful. And there was one point, there was a belly-to-belly over the top rope that Kurt gave to Edge, and Edge flew over the top rope to the floor, that were classic. But the way that they told the story of humiliating the other by shaving their head, and the way we built up to the story of cutting off a big chunk of Edge's hair on the way, which people, to somebody that had long hair, that was a big deal.
Yeah, and going into this, when you see one guy's got long hair and one guy's balding, everybody kind of assumes, oh, well, he's losing this.
Well, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew. So,
but that's what I'm saying, is the idea then to take a chunk out of Edge's hair makes you question, well, is that really what they're doing? Because if they were doing that, why would they do this?
Right.
Yeah.
And in the one thing that I wanted to make very clear in the promotion, because they had done a few things prior to this where, they had a Jeff Jarrett hair match where essentially they just gave him a haircut, and it actually looked better once he got the haircut than when he had the long straggly hair. And Kevin Nash did a deal where he wanted to lose a lose hair match. The same thing. He just got a haircut and not shaven bald. And there's just that. And again, this is old school thinking. Nowadays, people actually shave their head because they like the way it looks. But old school thinking was you held on to every single strand of hair you had, and being bald wasn't a status symbol. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't a look that people strove for. And so we wanted to get across the point that they would be shaved completely bald. And that was a big selling point, at least for me, on this match. And I thought the match itself was tremendous, the back and forth, and then the way Edge won it with a simple cradle was just fabulous, in my opinion.
Did you just make up a word and call it strove?
What they strove for? It's not made up. You strive for something, so the plural. If you're going to strive to do something, then you strove for it. Hey, we're just conversating here.
I guess it is a word. I guess it's the past tense.
Hey,
the past tense of strive.
Cash me outside. How about that?
I don't know. I've just never heard you dust off strove before.
Well, I got all kinds of them in here.
All right, I ain't mad at it.
I ain't got. I'll make up.
I threw it in my Google machine. It's a legit word. So I'm curious about the match itself. Is there any, the bump that stands out the most to me is what you referenced a minute ago, the angle belly to belly from the ring to the floor that Edge took. I mean, God, that seems like an unnecessary bump, especially in hindsight. That's the type of shit that shortens somebody's career, does it not?
If you don't know what the hell you're doing, it could, but Kurt was very safe and Edge knew what the hell he was doing.
Well, it looks awesome as a fan.
It does. Damn, it did.
Woo. And the false finishes here, the crowd maybe isn't as into it at the start of the match, but man, once they get going, the crowd is super, super hot for this. Probably one of their best matches together. I really enjoyed it. It's worth checking out. Of course, we know the result. Edge gets the win. Let's talk about the segment after, where then he gets him all the way up to the stage, sets him down in the barber chair. Where did you guys get the barber chair? Who was the barber? Give me something about all that.
Oh, the barber was actually just a shoot barber locally. He was nobody special. And the barber chair was just probably something Magic came up with along the line. Or it might have, I don't even remember. It was probably something Magic came up with for the set. That whole barber set up there. And the barber was a guy that if we really needed help doing the shearing, that he would actually be able to step in and help. Because it's not the easiest thing in the world to shave someone's head after they've been sweating like crazy.
It was reported at the time, believe it or not, they actually went back and forth on the finish before the show, and there was talk of shaving Edge. The theory was that he'd get over better with short hair, and I'm not making that up. Do you recall there being any sort of serious hesitation about this, or is this all make-believe, rumor, and innuendo?
That I wanted to shave Edge's head?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Big time.
Hell yeah, what big time? Hell yeah,
that I wanted to shave Edge's head, yes. Definitely pitch that, because, again, like you said earlier, well, everybody knows Kurt's going to lose.
Right.
That I felt it would have helped Kurt, and we could have gotten to the, again, this is the old school in me. I get two this way. You shave Edge's head, and he's proud of it. And, you let him come back. And we did, we just thought it would give him a different look, a fresh look. He could come back with hair and style it and do some different things. But then for the return, Kurt, doing something crazy with his hair and bragging about his hair, and then get Kurt's hair at a later date. So you get two of them out of it. But Edge wasn't really crazy about, shaving his head, and Vince wasn't really crazy about shaving his head.
Let's talk a little bit about Edge, because this is right before Edge, or not too long, before Edge becomes a serious main eventer and has a phenomenal run on top. But at the time, I'm curious, where was the positioning, at least in your mind, or the company's mind at the time, as far as the star power of an Edge and a Rock? Would you have argued at the time that Van Dam was a bigger star and you guys were trying to push Edge, or vice versa?
I would argue at the time that the future was in Edge. And I think everybody felt that. We felt that from the debut of Edge, that Edge was the guy that we wanted to go with. And he was somebody that we saw a lot in for a future in a singles run. So all the way through in Edge's career, he was always looked at as a guy to be one of the top talent.
Well, next up, we don't have a match. We've got more Booker T, and this time we see him at the Marriott. And when we cut to the scene, he is under the covers in a Marriott with all the lights on, and for some reason, a camera is there. The model that you guys hired from where? Where was the model from, Bruce?
Models R Us.
A model from Models R Us comes and jumps in the bed with him, and she asks him to turn the lights down. So he does. And he pitches something to her, and she instead replies with Goldust's voice. All of a sudden, once it's dark, Goldust starts talking, and he's in the bed with them. And he says that he wants Booker to leave the NWO and come back to Goldust. Booker gets annoyed by this, turns the lights on, jumps out of bed with his bare ass hanging out, and asks what the hell's going on. And he leaves the room. So, catch me up. When did you shoot that? Where did you shoot it? Who was the producer? I know you said, it was Brian's idea, but I want to hear about the actual shooting of this.
I think Brian actually shot it at the Marriott, the very Marriott that you saw in the picture that Jim Ross was able to put. That's Marriott right down the street, folks. We'll be later on down at the bar for, the old Ric Flair plug. But yeah, I think Brian shot it earlier in the day and just kind of knocked it out. But it was just strictly an entertainment piece. Neither guy was on the show, and it was a storyline that was going on in Raw at the time. And Booker and Goldust had great chemistry, so we wanted to keep that story going.
It's revealed, of course, when Goldust pulls the cover down that he's actually wearing women's lingerie. Is there any sort of hesitation from Booker T or Goldust putting this scene together, or are they both game for this?
Oh God, yeah, totally. They were on board completely. Goldust would do anything.
Next up, we have got an actual wrestling match, and this is a pretty big one, especially when you consider all of the talent that's on this roster. I know I've said that several times now, but we've got Triple H and Chris Jericho in what type of match, Bruce?
Hell in a Cell.
Briefly, let me ask you this. We haven't talked about this very much in the past, but it's been reported that Jim Cornette likes to take credit for Hell in a Cell and this concept. I think he maybe said something like that on a shoot interview once or something. From your recollection, does Jim Cornette deserve the credit for the concept Hell in a Cell?
I don't know. He may. It was during that time that he and Russo were writing with Vince, so he may.
Hypothetically, what would it sound like if Jim Cornette was trying to pitch Vince McMahon on the Hell in a Cell concept?
Well, goddamn, Conrad, it's fucking simple. You get a giant goddamn cage, and you put a top on the motherfucker, but it doesn't just come down around the ring ropes. You put it down all the fucking way around the goddamn ringside area, so it comes to the floor, motherfucker. And then they can work on the outside and take bumps into the fucking cage, but they can't get out of it. And then that goddamn motherfucker Vince Russo fucked it all up by having them get out of the goddamn cage. The cage is used to keep motherfuckers in and keep other motherfuckers out, not for the motherfuckers that are in to get out of the motherfucker, only to come back into the motherfucker after they got out of the son of a bitch and they took big fucking bumps out of it, onto it, then back into it. Motherfucker.
You know what? I think that's kind of how it went.
That's phenomenal. Next up, as we said, though, is Hunter and Jericho. It's going down here in a Hell in a Cell match. And the match here is, this is kind of ironic. Triple H is trying to battle Vince McMahon, and Chris Jericho has been dispensed to take care of Mr. McMahon's bidding and eliminate Triple H from competition here. Both guys look phenomenal here. This is one of the more underrated matches. I know nobody talks about this as far as great all-time Hell in a Cell matches because it's on such a loaded card, and it isn't necessarily maybe the best use of the actual match as a blow-off to a feud. But this is a fun match, and both of these guys know what they're doing. Hunter, it was reported in the newsletters at the time, Hunter was Hogan level tan this evening. Talk to me a little bit about, we haven't really talked about this much in the past, wrestlers' obsession with being tan. I know a lot of these guys do self-tanner, and sometimes that's more evident than others, but it really started to become something that you would notice when they made the switch to HD. But what was the fascination with tanning in wrestlers?
Tan in a can, man. Spray that shit on. Well, like for me, I like to tan just because of my good friend Arthur Morowitz said to me one time, he says, Bruce, fat looks better tan than it does white. So I try to get as much sun on the old bod as I possibly can. I know it's bad for you, but just because it looks better, tan looks better than white. But good God, yes, man, there was an obsession with how much of this shit, and they used to stand in line for the makeup artist to do the spray on tan, and then they would take the sponges and touch up areas of their body. It's a bodybuilder thing to make their muscles look bigger and more ripply.
Let's talk a little bit about the guys getting color. I found it interesting, and I know you hate when I talk about this, but they almost catch Hunter on camera doing it. I mean, he takes a bump into the cage, the camera's on him, and then it doesn't really move. So he's like, well, I guess they're not shooting me anymore. It rolls over to his right to go kind of stick his head half under the apron to make sure they don't see it. But before he goes, you see him pull his wrist tape back. is there any sort of Vince meltdown in the back that nobody in the truck is telling them to cut away or go to a different camera during this? Or do you remember there ever being a specific incident where Vince was really fired up that they didn't cut away and kind of revealed too much of how the magic is done here?
Well, sure, all the time. It's sometimes the truck gets caught. They're not perfect, and they got caught here. So the director's probably looking at something else, trying to set up another shot, trying to see what shot he has on other cameras, and just gets caught. Shit happens sometimes. Imperfect world, by God.
It was reported in the newsletters at the time that Jericho actually does the honors with his shoulder here. And I don't remember Jericho ever doing that. We've all famously seen the scars on Dusty Rhodes' arm, and we remember some of those barbed wire matches where stuff like this would happen. But do you remember there being an edict for Jericho to cut his shoulder?
No, it's probably something they just came up with, wanting to sell the cage. Which I think is clever. I think it's great.
It makes it real, for sure.
Yeah.
I've always liked when Jim Ross would use this analogy, and he did here, and it makes me smile. Whenever he sees one wrestler rub another's into the steel cage, he references that, they're trying to cut him up like coleslaw. And I always thought that's funny. Him being the barbecue guy, that's hilarious to me. There's also
they're trying to catch for him like coleslaw, like a cheese. He's like a cheese grater. Use that cage like a cheese grater with his forehead up against that solid steel cage.
We have got to do more Jim Ross impressions on this show for you. It's been a while since you dusted that one off, and that was fun. Tim White is the referee here, and there's some pretty fun spots in here. At different times, he's screaming at Jericho to stay in the ring in a fucking Hell in a Cell match.
Thank you. I'm screaming at him while I'm watching this shit, and I'm going, what the fuck do they need to get in the ring for, Tim? It's a goddamn Hell in a Cell. Get the fuck over it. And there's no DQ. There's no count out. Who the fuck cares where they are? Motherfucker.
Well, let's run through this. Around this time, it almost becomes a game of how are they going to get the cage door open? Because there was always some sort of shenanigan that had to happen around the cage, some interference from someone coming in, or the guys somehow find their way to the top of the cage. And that would be no different here. The way they get the cage door open here is they do a hell of a ref bump, which allegedly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Tim White actually legit dislocates his shoulder in the process of the bump here and actually has to go to the hospital after the show. Trumpets are out. And he actually gets color himself. Tell me about the injury and how you guys made the approach to say, hey, Mr. Referee, put this in your pocket.
Well, he did. Yeah, he did separate his shoulder. He got it pretty well screwed up right there and went to the hospital. I don't remember the color, but I definitely remember the separated shoulder. Yeah, Timmy was messed up. It was a hard, ugly bump.
This time, a bunch of referees come down and open up the cage so they can save Tim. And that's when Hunter goes under the ring and he finds his sledgehammer. Jericho is on the receiving end of that. Of course, though, when Triple H makes the cover, there is no ref. So Jericho starts to run for his life. They brawl around ringside. Hunter gives him a DDT through the Spanish announce table. And then he finds a barbed wire 2x4. Hypothetically speaking, why is a barbed wire 2x4 just chilling ringside in Nashville?
You never know when you might need one. And if you ever are in need of something, then you check under the ring because it most likely will be there. But you know what, Conrad? If you need legal services for anything, I mean, whether it's a car crash, whether it's a divorce, whether it's doing contracts, all you got to do is go see our good friends over at RGT4 Law, and they've got everything that you need right now.
Did you know there are billions of dollars set aside for asbestos victims and their families? If you or a loved one has been affected by mesothelioma or an asbestos-related cancer, you can call 855-748 855-748-4529 or a free consultation. That's 855-748-4529. Or visit rgtforlaw.com for more information. Robert Taylor, RG Taylor II, PC and Associates, Houston, Texas.
Well, you know where this is going. They make their way to the top of the cage. And this is not safe, especially in hindsight, knowing what we know about this structure. I can't imagine anybody being comfortable being on top of the cage. But at the time, there was this feeling that they've got to find their way up there. And you guys kind of created this. Is that fair to say, Bruce?
It drove me nuts because, again, I came from that old school of a cage match, nobody in, nobody out.
Right.
And that was without putting a top on the motherfucker. And the idea was to settle it inside the cage, not to get out of the cage. Again, sorry, folks. It's Bruce's weekly fucking cage rant. Goddamn, back in my day, motherfucker. Oh, damn, son. The object is stay in the fucking cage. That's what cage match is for. But, yeah. Not only do you get out of the Hell in a Cell, but to get away from somebody instead of running to the fucking back, climb to the top. Seems logical. I know what I'm going to do. There's an aisleway and a clear path to safety over here. I'm going up.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. Eventually, Jericho puts Hunter in the Lion Tamer on top of the cage, and a referee climbs on top of the cage to check the submission. Of course, Hunter refuses to tap out.
Tim White wanted those motherfuckers inside the ring. This referee says, well, I'll go on up on top of the cage to see if he's ready to submit. Do you want to tap out? Do you want to tap out? Yeah. That's the reason we need to get Timmy the fuck out of there, by God.
Eventually, Hunter gives Jericho a low blow and goes for the pedigree, but Jericho backdrops him out of it. Now, process this. They're on top of the damn cage, and they're taking backdrops. This will bring up some Mankind flashbacks from 1998 for sure. The cage does not collapse, thank goodness, and Hunter manages to get to his feet. He hits Jericho in the head with the barbed wire bat, and then hits the pedigree for the pin on top of the cage. It was described as good, but far from a classic. 3.25 stars, according to the dirt sheets. What does Bruce Prichard say?
Fuck Meltzer. I thought the match was good. It was entertaining for what it is and what people expect out of a Hell in a Cell today and back then. It served its purpose, and it was good for that type of a match. As far as going on top of the cage, it's just something I wasn't crazy about because it became and has become ever since. How do we top what they did last time? And in this particular instance, the idea was, well, maybe we're not going to take a big bump, but what if we had the finish on top of the cage, which was unique and different? So that's what they did. But then you have the awkward process of getting everybody. You do a finish on top of the cage. Now you got to get everybody down off the top of the cage. And it's just awkward after, pinning somebody. Now he's got to roll over. He's got to crawl to the edge of the cage and get down. So it was weird and awkward, but the match itself, they busted their ass and busted each other's asses, and I thought it was a good match.
One quick correction. I'm not using the Observer this week. I'm using Figure 4 Weekly and Brian Alvarez. So do you want to change your fuck Dave Meltzer?
Fuck Figure 4. I don't know Brian, so.
After that, we get another skit.
Same difference, isn't it?
We get another skit with Kurt Angle and Edge backstage. Anything you want to kind of put a bow on about all things Angle and Edge from this show?
Well, no, they haven't. We still haven't shaved his head yet, so we're going to get back to that after the tag match coming up. But it was a lot of fun, man. It was just Kurt hiding from Edge, and it was the Benny. I'm going to screw it up again. Benny Hill in England. The chase scenes, and that was the idea behind Edge chasing Kurt Angle backstage to finally trap him and get that head shaved. that was the idea that we were going for, with Kurt sitting in the makeup chair with the cap on and all that good shit. It was just a way to stretch that story out and people anticipating the head shaving.
Before we move on to the next match, I feel like I should circle back to something we talked about a minute ago. I don't know when we'll talk about him again in great detail, but Tim White is a guy who was a big part of the company for a long, long time. He was Andre's agent and a part-time referee, and that's how he kind of got into the company, and then spent a long time with you guys. Do I have that right?
He was a referee and a good friend of, oh my gosh, why am I going blank now? Jim Troy. Jim Troy was a hockey goon in Maryland that Vince owned the Cape Cod Coliseum. He was a goon on the Cape Cod hockey team and helped Vince run that hockey team. And Tim and Jimmy Troy were friends, and Tim was part of International, refereed, and he was good friends with Andre. So he would ride with Andre and help Andre out around the world whenever Andre traveled as well, later years.
Well, I think a lot of people associate Tim White with a couple of things. One, Andre the Giant, and then two, his lunchtime suicide stuff that I'm sure we'll cover later when we talk about 2005 or 2006 pay-per-views. But he would reference in some of those skits, I believe, this particular Hell in a Cell match. Do you remember? And I know this took him out of action for a while, and ultimately his shoulder would never be the same. Do you remember this injury in this match being a major moment in his career? I mean, it feels like it was never really the same after this match.
It was for him. Yeah, it was a bad injury, and it took him off of the road and out of the ring for quite some time while he healed. But it also allowed him to spend time at the Friendly Tap there in Massachusetts, where we destroyed it several times, and we paid for that bar about 4 times over. And it was a difficult time for Timmy because he enjoyed being on the road and enjoyed refereeing and being a part of the crew. So there was some time, and when he came back, he re-aggravated that injury, and the decision was made, not to put him in that position going forward.
Hell, we can. You're right, boss. Maybe we shouldn't put him in that position. What position? Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking more about Tim White. I feel like he's one of the more unsung heroes of the WWE, who did so much for so long. And I didn't really realize until I started doing some research on this show, but this is kind of the catalyst that would lead to the end of his refereeing career, because this injury would kind of follow him around for a long time. Let's take a time out real fast and talk a little bit about the commercial again, where they're promoting getting the F out. Early in the show, we saw a woman trimming some hedges and then torching it, and the scratch logo comes out and the F is gone. And now here we're doing another one, and this time they're kind of insinuating that people are having sex in a car, and they're promoting get the F out. Do you remember that particular skit? Who shoots that? Whose idea is that? How is that pitched or presented?
That was a television production. So the producers over there are the ones who actually shot all of those, put those together, had a whole marketing campaign of different ways to get the F out. And they did a whole series of these. Some were a little bit racier than others. Some could be on Raw, and some, could only be on pay-per-view. I'm not sure that this one made it onto cable TV or not. It might have, but it was, get the F out. Versus, yeah.
Next,
you saw my eyebrows up there, right?
I did.
And those of you at home, you felt it, right? You felt the eyebrows up. Get the F out.
We go to WWE New York, and here we see Maven. There's a blast from the past, and Tori Wilson sharing a big drink with a couple of straws, and then drinking champagne in separate glasses. Tori apparently says something sexual, and Maven does a spit take. This is not Russo. He's not here. Is this also a Brian call, or who's interested in booking these type of sexual innuendo skits?
Probably Vince McMahon more than anybody, especially when they take you right to where you would like to go, but then you don't get any of that. And we had the Sunday parties, whether it be Sunday Night Heat or the pay-per-view parties at the World in New York. And so we always had to have talent there. So whoever got the short straw had to end up being in New York at the restaurant. And it was just a way to get the restaurant a good plug-in and get talent on the pay-per-view.
Let's talk a little bit about the next match. We've got the tag team champions here. And this is Billy and Chuck, which I can't wait for us to cover in long form at some point in the future. I'm sure we will. But they're going to be taking on Rikishi and a mystery opponent as they defend their tag team titles. And the plan here is Rico, who we haven't ever spent much time talking about on the show. I'm interested to hear your takeaway on the placement of this match. And a lot of people may not understand why between a Hell in a Cell match like we just had and now our main event with The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan for the world title, you put this match in between. Explain the wrestling psychology of why this match makes sense right here.
To bring it back down and to you get off of a hot match with the Hell in a Cell and people are all hyped up. Now you want to kind of just bring them down before you bring out the main event. And in some terms, it would be viewed as the popcorn match, allowing people to get up, go to the bathroom, reset, go get popcorn, get refreshments, and then get settled in for the last match of the evening. And that's what this was. It was simply a spacer, so you don't go hot to hot. Sometimes you have to. But this was what this match was here. It was a feel-good match. Give people a let up.
Yeah, so the concept here, if you're not really familiar with storylines at the time, is that Chuck and Billy have, become a little bit of a pair here with Rico. And so when Vince is tasked with choosing a mystery opponent for Rikishi, he makes it be Rico to essentially, now it's 3-on-1. So it's not enough for it to be 2-on-1. He saddles him with a mystery partner who doesn't even, appear to want to be Rikishi's tag team partner. He's with the other guys. Of course, you know what comes here. Rico tries to kick Rikishi, but accidentally kicks Chuck instead. So Rikishi covers him for the pin. This match didn't go very long. It goes under 4 minutes. And it does make the tag belts look a little bit like a comedy prop, because in a 3-on-1 match here, essentially, one guy is now the tag team champs. So he is a reluctant tag team champion with Rico. I don't know why, but I found this interesting and fun. Do you have any good Rico stories you could share with us? I don't know when we'll talk about him again.
Rico was the original American Gladiator champion. When American Gladiator debuted in the 80s, they had, at the end of the season, they took their top winners from each episode and they competed against the Gladiators for the Ultimate American Gladiator Championship. Rico Constantino was the first American Gladiator champion. So after he had done all of his commitments with the American Gladiators, traveling around the world representing them, he tried his hand at professional wrestling. And he had sent in things from time to time, trying to get in with us, trying to get trained. He got in with a group in California at some point. But he had a great look, great body. And I met him, tremendous guy, really wanted to learn, green as grass, and we sent him to OVW. So Jim Cornette saw him, loved him. He should be the WWF champion. He's the All-American boy. He can work. He's great. He's good looking. He's got the American Gladiator champion, motherfucker. And that was the kiss of death. Because kind of like I talked about how Paul Heyman, it would depend on who was pitching who at what time.
Right.
Corny's pitch of Rico kind of didn't help Rico a whole lot. And Vince didn't see that All-American. And Rico was older at this point. Rico was in his mid-30s at this point. He wasn't a spring chicken. and had some injury issues and different things, but a great guy. He was a cop I think he still is a cop in Las Vegas.
He was 41 right here, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. But when we brought him into OVW, he was in his mid 30s. So yeah. And now he's 41 getting the break, but it just wasn't, Vince didn't see a whole lot in him and saw him more as a manager and as a mouthpiece, but his real calling in life was as a peace officer and being a cop in Vegas.
He's not had the best health run lately. I think he's got some heart issues and maybe some concussion issues. And by everyone's testimony, was a good guy. So hope he's doing well with whatever is going on with him today. Let's talk about.
Well, I'm sorry. You asked. I'm gonna go sidebar here for you. You asked for a Rico story. I'll tell you a Rico story. The day that we were doing the Billy and Chuck wedding,
right?
We were shooting it live. We were doing all that stuff live, and Rico was legit flustered. He had a lot to remember that day. He had a shitload to do that day. And we were coming backstage, and the idea was that Rico would be on his cell phone flustered with the wedding planner and going nuts. And I tried pre-taping it, and he couldn't get it. He just wasn't flustered enough because he was actually flustered. He was trying to act. And this is the one and only guy I've ever done this with. Well, maybe not, but I remember this one specifically. I said, Rico, we're going to do this live, but God damn it. You get this shit out of your head, and I need you to be flustered. And he was trying so hard. I told the guys to count me down. Let me know exactly where we are before we go live. And 8 seconds before we were going live, Rico had the phone up to his ear. And I slapped the living fuck out of him right across the face and knocked the phone out of his hands. And his phone broke. He had like a flip StarTAC phone.
Yeah.
And he was so flustered trying to pick up the phone, and I'm counting him down. Come on, Rico, we're going live now. 3, 2. And he's picking the phone up, putting it together, and he was so flustered. It was the best backstage thing he ever did because he was shoot flustered. He was beside himself and didn't know what to do, and that was exactly the emotion I was looking for. And afterwards, I hugged him and I said, please don't kill me, because he's a legit badass, too. Like, please don't kill me. It's the only way that I knew that you would nail this thing live. And if you didn't nail it live, you and I both were going to get our asses chewed out. And thank God he forgave me. But it was a good take. That was my Rico story.
Thoughts and prayers for Rico. Hope he's doing well. Let's talk a little bit about Chuck and Billy here. I know we're going to talk about it in long form, but whose idea would this have been? Is this a Brian idea?
No, this was a Vince idea. It was either a Vince idea or a Paul Heyman idea, one of the two. But no, not Brian Gewirtz gets no credit for Chuck and Billy. But Vince loved it.
Is that it? Nothing else?
Yeah, that's really it till we get into a long form. If we get into everything else, we'll be here forever, Conrad.
Rikishi, let's touch on him. We haven't talked about him quite a bit here on the show. Obviously, he's had a few different runs. A lot of people remember him as the Sultan and his various other gimmicks. But Rikishi's the one that he really struck it big with, and now is a Hall of Famer. We've talked about briefly, the Armageddon match, which I'm sure we'll cover at some point, for in Birmingham. He falls on a flatbed truck and takes the big bump off of Hell in a Cell. Where would you rank Rikishi as far as being a player for the company at the time? Because, man, he was over like Rover.
God, yes, man. He was a big player. And this is going to sound funny. When Yokozuna started for us way back in 92, whatever it was, 93, whatever, in that time frame, the idea was for Yoko to wear the traditional sumo garb. No trunks, just have his ass hanging out and everything. And Yoko was uncomfortable with that. So we put on the tights, the red tights or white tights that he wore, and then the sumo dress over that. Rikishi, I remember going to Memphis, Tennessee to pitch Jr. on being this Rikishi character, bleaching his hair blonde and doing the sumo gimmick. And he looks at me and says, "Wow, you want me to bleach my hair?" I said, "I'm not at the best part yet." He says, "Yeah, go ahead." I said, Yoko was huge. But here's the idea that we originally had for Yoko. I truly do believe that had Yoko gone the extra mile, that nobody could have touched him. And again, it's a little thing, but it's a big thing too. I said, we would like to do something similar with you. But Vince is only going to do it if you wear the traditional type sumo garb and you expose your ass. And he really believes that if you do this, that you will be a huge star. And I think that was the difference with Kishi, that he was willing to go. But as the more popular he got, the more that he did it, the more he tried to cover up his ass. And that's what brought him to the dance, was that big ass. So if you go back and you look at his first year that he came out, you got a lot more of that Rikishi ass, and then later years he tried to broaden it, get a little bit bigger whale tail as years went on. But that ass got him over, man.
I don't know why, but Bruce Prichard saying that ass got him over makes my day. Okay, now we're going back to what we're all here for, I guess. Kurt Angle jumps Edge, drags him over to the barber chair. He goes for the Olympic slam. Edge sneaks in, puts him in a sleeper hold. And for the first time in recent wrestling history, the man in the sleeper hold actually goes to sleep. And then Edge starts to shave his head, quite vigorously, I might add. And he's using a straight razor in the process. Kind of catch me up about this skit and the big payoff here. It feels like everybody should make sure that Edge never gets to shave their head after seeing how this comes together. And of course, the big payoff is Angle finally looking in the mirror and freaking out. So they delivered on the hair versus hair, and it happens right before our main event. What'd you think of the payoff here?
I love the payoff, but a couple things. The sleeper that Edge put on Kurt Angle was a shoot sleeper. And what I mean by that is if you go back and you look at it, you look at the way that Edge applied it, he applied it as a real sleeper, not the working sleeper you saw for so many years by people where they would, cup the top of the head, and it was basically a reverse chin lock that had gone awry. Edge actually put it on like a real sleeper hold. So that part I liked especially, and we made sure that he did that properly. And then we had multiple clippers, electric clippers, because the battery clippers do not go through wet hair. Learned our lesson many, many years ago that whenever you see clippers for a head shaving match, they better be electric clippers and have a long extension cord. Otherwise you're screwed. But we had multiple clippers up there, and I think we went through 2 of them to get the majority of the hair out. And then, gave Edge a straight edge razor. Get it? Straight edge?
Mm-hmm.
To do the remaining head shaving. I thought it worked out good. I thought it was, a good, typical, nice heel getting his head shaved, and Kurt played it off to perfection, even breaking the mirror, and maybe that's where his 7 years of bad luck came. No? Too soon?
Oh, my gosh. Can't
Kurt,
believe you did that.
Kurt, I love you. When somebody plays that shit for you, make sure they play this whole part where, Kurt, I love you. You know that.
Next up, we've got the main event. Hulk Hogan's last title defense here in the WWE. I guess his first title defense in the WWE and his last. He has been a staple of the company for so long, and this is his kind of hurrah run, and we're here. It's Undertaker, it's Hulk Hogan, it's the main event, and the Undertaker comes to the ring in, I don't know, a pretty controversial situation. We're all used to the Undertaker being the dead man, but here he's the American badass, and he's got Limp Bizkit doing his theme song. how does the Limp Bizkit thing come about? Briefly tell us about the decision to do the American Badass. There's lots of rumor and innuendo out there that once upon a time, Kevin Nash has put it out there that Undertaker almost came to WCW, and eventually McMahon finally said, you can do whatever you want. I just need you to stay. And he said he wanted to do American Badass. Set the record straight. Did Taker almost go to WCW? Was he ever unhappy? Did Vince allow him to do the American Badass to sort of pacify him? Whose idea was the character? Where was the input coming from? How the hell does the Limp Bizkit stuff come together?
Okay, God, so much to cover here. So much to cover. And for those of you who have already hit your Twitter machine saying, Conrad, it was not Hulk Hogan's first, you had to catch what Conrad said there. He said this was Hulk Hogan's first WWE title defense and his last. Because, see, we just got the F out. So that's what he meant.
You didn't raise your eyebrows when he said it there.
Huh?
You didn't raise your eyebrows when he said it there.
I'm sorry. We had just gotten the F out. And so see, Conrad was being cute there, and I was laughing just thinking of my Twitter blowing up with people correcting us saying, it wasn't his first title defense. But anyway, where the hell was I? Undertaker had offers to go to WCW, but no, he was never close to going. He thought about it and weighed the options. I believe it was Undertaker's idea to do American Badass. The original theme song was actually Kid Rock. I am American whatever American Badass and shit. And I thought that one worked great. Limp Bizkit, then at this point, he wasn't necessarily the American Badass. He was going now to the Dead Man. It was a transition from really American Badass to Dead Man Inc. And that's where Undertaker was at this point. But he liked the motorcycle character. That's probably closer to his real personality.
What, you mean he's not a dead man in real life? He doesn't walk around brooding in slow motion everywhere?
No, he is. And then he does, but it just a little bit easier to be a bike riding badass, kick-ass redhead sumbitch.
I'm curious, what's the difference, at least from your perspective, between the American Badass and Dead Man Inc.?
Semantics. Seriously, that's all it is. It's semantics.
It's a different T-shirt.
It's simply being able to have new shit to sell that sells Dead Man Inc. So you go from being the American Badass to the Dead Man.
I was hoping that you were just going to say the T-shirt because it's the same.
Fuck yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it. I'm in.
Dude, I still have Dead Man Inc. shit. The only thing that I have merchandise-wise, other than things that you can pick up at brucepritchard.com, which are great values, and I call everybody that buys stuff, is I have a Stone Cold shirt, and I have a Dead Man Inc. shirt. That's it.
The Limp Bizkit situation. Catch me up.
Limp Bizkit was looking to promote their new song. They wrote it, and it was just an opportunity to kind of cross-promote and work with Limp Bizkit. So that's all it was. It was simply a marketing opportunity.
But he's not coming out. It was over, as crazy as it sounds, but he's not using that theme here. What did you think of his theme music here? And at the time,
hated it. Hated it.
Fucking
hated it. Sorry, and I'm trying not to cuss as much, folks. I'm really trying. But I fucking hated it.
Brian wrote, Undertaker came out to the worst theme song of his career. God, his Limp Bizkit song was the only thing he had going for him, and now he doesn't even have that anymore. God, this company is finished. By the way, the reasoning behind the new song was that the old song made people cheer for him. I wish I was making all of this up. Chat me up. Why the switch to the theme music if the Limp Bizkit stuff was over?
Well, it probably had run its course as far as rights.
And so instead, how does this theme music?
Jim, give me a goddamn ripoff. Make it good. I want it to sound like a cross between the Limp Muffin and that Kid Roll. Those two big stars. I think, yeah.
Limp Muffin and Kid Roll. Who could forget?
Yes.
Good guy, that Limp Muffin.
Chat me up about Hulk Hogan here.
Roll Tide.
I love when you do that. Whose idea was doing this one last nostalgia run with Hogan as champion? Is this something that Hogan talks his way into a good position here and gets in Vince's ear? Or is Vince all in favor just going with what he knows and what's worked before?
Well, you're going to shit all over this. Oh, yeah, right. It was Triple H. It was Triple H who said, wow, wouldn't it be neat to drop the title to Hulk Hogan? And it came on the day of the show that it was brought up. Hey, you know, goddamn, man, Hogan's fucking red hot right now. What if he beat me? And I was like, does he have, one more? We can get it. We don't have to leave it on him long. See how they react. And that was it. It was simply a situation. It was one of those deals where something is suggested at a production meeting and our life fucking gets turned upside down in 6 hours and we got to rewrite everything. That was it. It was a short run. Let's try it. Hunter wanted to drop the title to him.
And it bounced around a couple of times. There was a title change at WrestleMania 18 when Triple H would beat Chris Jericho, and then a title change the very next month at Backlash, which would have been in April. And now here we are in May, and there's another title change. I know that you're just going to say that belts are a prop and they don't really matter, but was there any thinking that, holy shit, we're flipping this thing around once a month right now?
Yeah, and I hated that. I did hate that. That's why I wasn't in favor of dropping it to Hogan in the first place, because that was never in the plan. But it happened, and we had to deal with it. So get it off of him and try and settle down a little bit.
It would keep going too. King of the Ring would be the exception in the next month, but The Rock would win the belt, right after that at Vengeance. So it seems like there's lots of, back and forth title changes, even up till SummerSlam and I can't wait to cover SummerSlam 02 with you at some point in the future, but Brock becomes the champ. So you've got the belt just hot potatoing, Brock, Rock, Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, Triple H, Jericho, just month after month after month. It's an interesting time in the company.
I think the argument can be made both ways, that it's good and bad. My point of view was, for the most part, most of the time, I didn't like the belt flip-flopping all the time. Strizap.
Our good friend over at leatherbydan.com has told me before, and I think Dave Milliken has discussed this, there's all this wrestling belt fandom that exists, and there's been lots of talk about this undisputed belt that you guys had Joe Marshall make that the guys were wearing at the time. There's various versions here in various sizes, some larger than others. Do you remember anybody specifically liking or hating this belt and this design?
I liked it.
Amongst the boys, do you remember anybody having a strong opinion? There's a rumor out there that Hogan didn't like the way the belt made his junk look. That's a real thing. Do you have any memories of the way?
No, I have no idea about Hogan and his junk and how he...
Everybody else does, brother.
No, I don't remember that one. Never heard that one, but no, not that I can think of.
Hey, I don't know when we'll talk about it again. Did you ever watch that Hulk Hogan Gawker porn? Where he hulked up on Bubba the Love Sponge wife?
Yeah.
You did watch it?
I don't want to talk about Hulk Hogan's junk. Yeah, why do we talk about guys' junk?
Well, we're not, but someone...
We got Rick Rude's dong. We got, what else?
Well, let's do another one. Kamala's penis was my favorite.
Kamala's penis, yeah.
How about...
Can we do one show without talking about somebody's private parts?
Maybe next week. This week, though, let's try to get hashtag Hulk's Thermos trending on Twitter.
No, I never had a discussion with Hulk about how his dong looked.
No, we're not saying dong. We're not doing that. We're saying thermos. I think there was a court document somewhere that described it as thermos-like, which I thought was the most hilarious way ever to describe a part of the human anatomy.
You're fucking brutal.
So no feedback about the belt. You
like it.
Wow.
I don't know. Again, I'm not that big of the belt nerd. I looked at it, and if I liked it, I liked it. There was some I didn't like. I wasn't crazy about the Intercontinental title, but this one I liked.
Any recollection of why the size was different? There was one that was fucking monstrous, and then others that maybe weren't so much.
May have just been the size of the guy at the time. I don't know. I don't remember having multiple belts.
Thanks for all the insight here, Tony Schiavone.
No, I don't think that we had multiple belts. I think that it may have looked bigger on certain guys.
What did you think of this match? I thought it looked like it was. I remember being in the crowd and feeling like it was kind of sad because I had grown up with these two characters, and specifically a little Hulkamaniac. And then when Hogan tries to slide in the ring and gets stuck and then winds up just being stuck on his belly there. The choke slam.
Well,
there's a spot, we should talk about the choke slam. Hogan is poised to take a choke slam from the Undertaker and here's what Brian wrote. Undertaker went for the choke slam and time stood still. Hogan just stood there, dead weight. Undertaker looked at him as if to say, well, are you going up or not? Hogan finally took the bump, but using the term bump as an insult to anyone who has ever taken one. It was pathetically, literally beyond description. And while I say this every week and it has become a cliche, this was the single worst bump I have ever seen in a major match. Totally took the wind out of the crowd's sails. Hogan hulked up, hit the boot, leg drop of doom, and Undertaker kicked out. I'm trying to add some excitement here. Hogan, shocked, did the Hogan face. Taker hit a DDT. Hogan kicks out. Vince comes to ringside. Hogan punches him out and gives him a leg drop. This distracts the ref, allowing Undertaker to hit Hogan with a chair. Taker then hits a second choke slam, after which the first one looked like a Tiger Driver 91, and got the pin. At least the crowd liked it. After the match, Taker did the old chair to the throat angle for the Hulkster, who unfortunately isn't going anywhere for a while. Star and 1/4. Lots and lots and lots of tweets and questions and interaction about this chokeslam spot. Were you in the back in Gorilla when this happens? What did you think of the match and that particular spot?
Well, the bad one was the first choke slam. The second choke slam wasn't as bad.
Of course not.
But it was fucking awful. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of chemistry here in the whole match. The whole match was as if it was in slow motion. And both guys were not on their game. And you could tell, like I said, from the very beginning, coming down to the ring, it just didn't, Hulk putting on the brakes, or the brakes being put on Hulk, sliding into the ring, you kind of went, oh shit, I know where this match is going. And it went downhill from there. It just wasn't one of the better outings for either guy. I think Hulk was beyond being able to work with somebody that wants to be physical like Taker liked to do. And you go to that first choke slam, and it's like, oh my God. And I knew, everybody knew at that point he was going to get another one. He ain't going out. And the second one at least looked better than the first. That's what I can say about that. And I think everybody was happy when the match was finally over.
Were you sitting with Vince when the choke slam happens, and what did that sound like?
No, Vince was probably warming up because he had to go out to the ring. So, he probably wasn't even there. He was probably in the back somewhere just warming up, and I was, best I can remember, sitting at Gorilla with Jerry watching the match.
What was there any dialogue with Hulk or Taker, or, what were people saying to them when they came through the curtain after this?
Taker was thankful it was over.
Yeah.
I think he just wanted to get the hell out of Dodge and just be done.
He still had some heat at this point with Hogan. Is that fair to say?
They were over it. They're businessmen, and they were over it. And he just, was like, glad that, first of all, he was happy to work with Hulk, because getting to work with Hulk, you're working with Hulk Hogan, and that's an honor in and of itself, and something that I think anybody in the business would be happy to do. I know I always loved working with him. So that part of it, he was happy, and Hulk's a draw and a big name, but he wasn't happy with the performance in the match overall, because it wasn't a good match. And I think he was disappointed that he couldn't get that out of him from Undertaker's spot, and thankful that the damn thing was finished and done, and he could move on. I think Hulk was glad to get out of there alive and move on to the next thing. No matter what Hulk did, especially at this point in his career, the audience was going to forgive him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was in the crowd that night, and even though in hindsight it doesn't age well, yes, people weren't really tickled with the first chokeslam, but people were still reacting to Hulk Hogan because we grew up with Hulk Hogan, and
He's Hulk Hogan.
He's Hulk Hogan. So he can do no wrong. So we can be critical of, his performance a little bit here or there, but in the end, he's still Hulk Hogan. Let's take to Twitter and answer some questions, because we got lots of feedback about this. Justin Hanna wants to know, did anyone ever pitch the idea for Brother Love to manage Reverend Devon and Deacon Batista?
Yeah, Devon did. And I produced a lot of that stuff with Devon. Heyman started out producing it, and then Devon asked if I would produce it, and really wanted to do something with Brother Love. Devon was a big fan of Brother Love, and I was also a big fan of Devon.
And Devon's family has a ministry background. Do I have that right?
Yes, correct. So he knew it, and he loved the cadence. And if anything, all I did with Devon was try and help him with cadence.
Now, give us an example of cadence. I know what you mean, but kind of catch everybody up at home who may not be in the loop on what you mean.
Of how and when you accentuate certain words.
Yeah, all in the delivery.
Yes.
Why ultimately was the decision made not to involve Brother Love? Was Vince just kind of over it, or you weren't wanting to do it?
I wasn't wanting to do it, but also would have been kind of competing.
Yeah, that's fair.
With Devon, and I didn't want to take away from Devon, and that was Vince's main thing. He felt that, these Vince's words, that it would pale in comparison, pal, and it would not be fair to Devon. I didn't think so, but I just didn't want to do it because I felt it would be conflicting.
Danny Brown on Twitter wants to know, what was the process for getting bikes for each show?
By that time, I think we were carrying Taker's bike on the truck. So that was the bike that we had that we carried from town to town on the 18-wheelers.
Does he go out and buy his own bike? Does the company buy the bike and just give it to him at the end of the run?
For that one, I think we bought the bike, and he eventually ended up with it, yeah. We had for a while Titan bikes out of Nashville, Tennessee, that built bikes for us that gave them to us.
Does Vince just give Taker the bike when they're done, or does he pay for it? Do you recall?
Does who pay for it? Undertaker?
Well, obviously Vince pays for it, but I'm asking, does the Undertaker...
He said he paid for it.
Okay. What do you think I'm asking, dickhead?
I don't know. Slow down. It's fucking, I'm texting and I'm technology challenged.
Well, stop texting when you're fucking doing a podcast, jerk. Answer the question.
I'm trying to listen.
Oh my gosh. Catch me up. When the Undertaker gets a bike from the company, does it come out of his check? Does he write a check for it? Is it a gift from Vince?
Gift.
Thank you. Sammer wants to know on Twitter, why didn't Hogan use the Real American theme here instead of Voodoo Child? Who made that decision?
He was Hollywood Hulk Hogan at the time, man. Did you see the beard? That was a Hulk deal when he would grow the beard. He was Hollywood Hulk. So yeah, and the shit that's on the network now, that was the worst rip off of Voodoo Child I've ever heard in my life. It wasn't even Voodoo Child on the network. And it's Samur Abu Ghush.
Gerald on Twitter wants to know, we all know that hindsight's 2020, Does Bruce Prichard regret allowing The Undertaker to do the American Badass gimmick, or was it worthwhile?
I think it was worthwhile because it was an evolution and just a natural progression. I was much happier when we went back to the original Undertaker character, but it was a progression. At first I hated it, but then it worked.
Here's a question, if you want to play conspiracy theorists. Real Talk on Twitter wants to know, was The Undertaker always in the plan to win the title, even if Hogan never won it from Triple H the month prior at Backlash? What he's asking there is, I wonder if Triple H, he's not saying it like this, but this is what he implies. I wonder if Triple H asked to drop the belt to Hogan so he doesn't have to drop the belt to The Undertaker. Because Hogan is a nostalgia piece that people will forgive, and he'll be in and out, and it'll be looked upon differently as far as main guys on the main roster if Triple H loses to Hogan as compared to Undertaker.
No, I think the original plan always was to eventually get to, there was Jericho and Triple H at the time. That was always supposed to kind of be about the championship and what have you, and eventually get it to Rock at some point. But then once Rock got it, Rock wanted to drop the damn thing to Brock, and all hell broke loose. But
so this whole,
I don't think Undertaker was ever in the plans. It was just simply okay, we've got Hogan now,
gotta
rather
get it
than
off
back
of
with Hunter. Yeah.
So
Because Hunter was a babyface.
So the question here, I guess, is, that really is a peek behind the curtain for people who are really trying to understand the way things happen and why things happen. Because really, process, if Triple H hadn't asked to drop the belt to Hogan, then Hogan doesn't have this last run here, and The Undertaker doesn't have the belt here. It all looks a whole hell of a lot different than it does.
Yeah. And it doesn't just affect one brand because we were split at the time. It affected both brands. And it was
a lot.
Fuck, it was brutal.
I don't know when we'll talk about it again. I'd like to talk about it one day if and when we put it on a poll, and we're going to get to the poll in just a moment. But building up to this handicap match, we didn't discuss the Hardy Boys chair shots on Brock Lesnar. If you haven't seen this, I encourage you to go out of your way to see the April 8th, 2002 edition of Monday Night Raw. And there are two vicious, hard, any sort of descriptive term you want to insert here for violence, for chair shots delivered from the Hardy Boys to the skull of Brock Lesnar. Looking back, this does not age well. Of course, we didn't know what we know now back then. Was there any sort of heat, or was the direction from the company, hey, he's a monster, so lay it the fuck in?
Well, it was probably direction from Brock. Lay that shit in. Because he's crazy.
Do you remember the chair shots I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was brutal. It was. I cringed watching it, just trying to think today. Oh, yeah, they were nasty. That was probably at the request of Brock.
Well, we've got the request of you coming up here on Prichard's show. That's kind of what we do. We take to you on Twitter and say, hey, man, what do you want to hear? So we're going to ask you again this week, what do you want to hear? The way to get involved is just follow us at Prichard Show on Twitter. And we'd love to go ahead and get your feedback on Twitter as well. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. He is at Bruce Prichard. If you have a specific question about the show, or you'd like to become involved or interact with more members, don't forget, we've got a forum available for you now at WHWRadio.com. That's WHWRadio.com. But by the time you're listening to this, the poll is up, or it will be shortly. 4 topics for next week. Bruce, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Poll topic number 1. It's a little bit of a sad note, but we have just passed the anniversary of the passing of Miss Elizabeth, the original First Lady of the WWF. She was there during the golden era of all things that you enjoyed about wrestling as a kid. The Macho Man, Hulk Hogan. Is he going to marry her? Is she going to give it back with him? Is she going to forgive him? The whole story that is Miss Elizabeth. And unfortunately, we would have to go ahead and tell the end of the story because the WWE did a big job on this on Confidential at the time that was kind of controversial, that painted a picture maybe less than favorable of certain characters in the story. What might we talk about if Miss Elizabeth wins poll topic number 1?
Well, I want to talk about the positive things because I had a lot of fun actually getting to know Liz behind the scenes and spending a lot of time with her and Randy on the road from time to time and in their home. So I'm going to talk about the fun times that I had with Liz and how I felt about her as a person. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady.
We're also going to bounce around because we are just past the anniversary of Backlash 2006. This one took place in Kentucky, and it's notable for one thing more than everything else. Do you remember right off the top of your head, Bruce?
Vince McMahon versus God.
As crazy as that sounds, Vince and Shane tagged against Shawn Michaels and God in a no-holds-barred match. I can't believe this is a real thing. It's ridiculous, but we will cover it if it wins poll topic number 2. Also in that card, we should mention guys that are on there, so if you'd like to hear about them, we would be covering them. Umaga, Ric Flair, Trish Stratus, Mickie James, Carlito, Chris Masters, Shelton Benjamin, Kane, Big Show, Rob Van Dam, and then in the main event, it's a triple threat with John Cena, Triple H, and Edge. What else we might talk about if Backlash 2006 wins the poll?
I want to talk about how difficult God was to deal with in this match. It was like he agreed to do the job first, and he didn't want to do the job. Then he said, okay, maybe. But he just went back and forth. He was always late getting there.
I'm already regretting this topic. Poll topic number 3, WWE CW. That's a little confusing, but once upon a time, the WWE decided to bring back Extreme Championship Wrestling. It all started with One Night Stand in 2005, but the company was relaunched and rebranded in June of 2006. It was on the Sci-Fi Network, and it underwent several incarnations, and then ultimately it died in 2010. What might we talk about if WWE CW wins?
Oh, good God, we've got to talk about that first night ECW on Sci-Fi, the monster and the vampires. Oh my, just the horrors. Yeah, thinking about vampires and monsters. Just simply the horrors of ECW. And if I may have another volley, sir, all throughout an WWECW. Yeah, that was a painful time in my life.
Lots of interesting stuff happened in this, and it's not all good stuff, and it's not the ECW you grew up on. And you called him the monster, but you mean the zombie. As ridiculous as that sounds. But there you go. WWECW is poll topic number 3. Poll topic number 4, last but certainly not least, we just touched on at the start of this week's episode about Judgment Day 2002, the passing of the British Bulldog. He passed away just a couple of days prior to the show we just covered, Judgment Day 2002. So we're right near the anniversary of his passing too. So poll topic number 4 is the British Bulldog. Came into the company as a tag team, went on to have great success as a single, had a phenomenal main event match against Bret Hart at Wembley Stadium that Bruce wasn't there for, so he could give his opinion on the match, but he can't really tell you how it was put together. And then, of course, all the craziness that happened after. His firing with The Undertaker, his ins, his outs, the situation in Montreal. What else might we talk about if the British Bulldog wins poll topic number 4?
I just think we're going to get into simply the man behind the British Bulldog, David Smith, and talk about his contributions to the business and overall the ups and downs that accompanied. It wasn't all just, roses and peach pie. It was some dark times there as well with David Boy Smith.
So there you go. There are your 4 poll topics for next week. We've got Elizabeth, Backlash 2006, WWECW, and the British Bulldog. And the only way to vote is to cruise over right now to @Prichard Show on Twitter. Throw down your vote. The poll's going to be up through the weekend. It'll come down on Tuesday morning, and we'll be back here next Friday on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard on the MLW Radio Network. We'd love to have your interaction on Twitter. I encourage everybody to follow us. He is at Bruce Prichard. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. And as I mentioned before, you can check us out on our forum at whwradio.com. Of course, if you pick up a t-shirt at brucepritchard.com, not only do you get a great shirt that's hilarious and is the best way to support the show, but Bruce will actually give you a call and thank you for that. And I also want to thank our sponsors today. Just in time for Mother's Day, guys, don't get caught with your britches down on this. You can look like a hero for only $19.99. Go to proflowers.com, click on the microphone on the top right-hand corner, and use that promo code WWE. For $19.99, you're going to get a great arrangement with a free glass vase for the woman in your life, whether it's mom, grandma, your baby mama, your wife, whatever your situation is. You look like a hero, and it's cheap. Support the show, make that order, and then tweet it to the show. And I can't encourage you enough, if you haven't already, cruise over to sofasandmoreonline.com. I'm going to do the heavy push here because the coupon never expires. I can't believe this is a thing. You get 20% off to infinity. You may say, you know what, man? I don't need any furniture, and I don't think I'm going to anytime in the near future. Cool. How about ever before you die? That's a long time, dude. Go right now, sofasandmoreonline.com. Click the Contact Us form, and right there, you'll want to put Prichard in the subject line. They're going to respond to you with an awesome coupon for 20% off that never expires. Maybe you're thinking, hey, I don't have a house, or I'm not moving, or I've got all the furniture I need. Cool. You're going to have kids. They're going to need furniture one day. You're going to move. You're going to get a promotion. You're going to get a new job. You're going to buy a house. You're going to buy a smaller house. You're going to have life come your way, and you are going to need furniture. Why would you ever pay retail if you, in a few clicks right now, could save 20%? Go to sofasandmoreonline.com, click the Contact Us form, and just put Prichard Show. Boom, 20% off coupon forever. Forever coming your way. Hook it up. Bruce, anything else we need to promote besides reminding everybody that livenation.com has most of our live show tickets, and we're coming to you no matter where you are. Just check it out at livenation.com and search for Bruce Prichard.
And our friends in Baltimore can go check out mcwprowrestling.com to get tickets for our show at Jimmy's Famous Seafood in Baltimore on June 4th. St. Louis at notarib.com. The UK, go to hookedonevents.co.uk. And you know, you were talking about moving over there with our friends at sofasandmore.com. If you need a mortgage, you need to refinance, it's as simple as going to savewithbruce.com. We can help you out. You don't even need perfect credit, but come by and see us and let us help you save some money.
SaveWithBruce.com will hook you up. And Bruce, when you SaveWithBruce.com, you actually talk to you personally about your situation. Do I have that right?
You better believe it. I'm going to talk to you, get all your particulars, and I've got a great guy by the name of Terry Stafford who can help you with all of your needs, no matter what it may be. Give us a chance. Slide on over to SaveWithBruce.com. It's fast. It's easy. Fill out the form and get on your way to saving money.
We're only a month away. Cruise on over right now to mt.cm and pick up your tickets, Baltimore. Extreme Rules, Jimmy's Seafood. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You're going to love it. mt.cm. And we'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle With. You want to say it this time?
No, I was going to wait for you to say it because you always do it, but this is what I need you to do it. Do it like with eyebrows up this time, like say with Bruce Prichard.
With Bruce Prichard? How was that?
Better.
Dude, it's Cinco de Mayo. Maybe you should do it Mexican style.
Con Conrad Thompson on Cinco de Mayo.
Dave Silva must be proud or offended or both.
Si bien. Adios.
Bruce Prichard.
God damn, I love it. Let's do the na-na-na song. Na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na. Hey, 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 goodbye. And we'll start it, and they'll play it, and then they'll start singing na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na. Hey, 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 goodbye.
and then they just start chanting, and you sing it, and you get them going along with it.